This is where I sit here at night and type.
Mm-hmm. This is November 29th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Walter Roland. Mr. Roland, where were you born?
I was born in southwest Texas. It's either Blanco County or Scurry County. One of the counties was split and made two counties, and I don't know which one was the original, but I was born in the original.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a sod buster, they called him. He bought some school land. I believe it was Block 297 in the out of 97, but they tell me that I couldn't say that. I'd say Block 70. And he was there when the Rangers were trying to keep the nesters out.
Mm-hmm. Was your father one of the nesters?
He was a nester.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't talk, him and Mother didn't talk much about that down there. I think there was some things they wanted to forget mostly.
Mm-hmm.
About the only thing he ever told me, said the Rangers would tear their fences down and let their cattle in on their crops, and they organized and they had an agreement when the ranchers turned the cattle in on their crop, they'd blow a horn and all the nesters would congregate in that place, and they bought them an axe handle, and they'd ride their pony right up the side of an old cow's back and just work her one certain cow over real good. They usually picked the leaders. Said cows had leaders just like people, and they'd pick the leaders. Said they worked those leaders over, said they couldn't even drive them back up there anymore.
When's your birthday?
July the 9th.
What year?
1890.
So were you born on the area that your father homesteaded down in
Yes, sir.
Texas?
Yes, sir.
How long, did your father ever say how long it took to get established there before the
It
ranchers left?
took, they made a payment on that, and then they had to stay on it, sort of like homesteading. They had to stay on it, I think, 5 years. He never did prove up, I don't think.
What kind of house were you born in?
A half dugout tent. The way I remember what they told me. And a hole dug in the ground with a tent stretched over it.
How big was it?
I don't have any idea. The only water they had was from buffalo waters, and my mother contracted slow fever, typhoid fever, and they moved over to Bosque County to some of her relatives, and she almost died, and her hair all came out. She had real dark red hair, and it all came out. And about the only thing I can remember, the children of the family had a pet goat they worked to a wagon, which must have been not over 2 years old or something like that. But I can remember riding in that wagon with that goat, and I remember one day they wouldn't let me ride, and I was heartbroken about it. And I remembered we'd gather this old parsley. I don't know whether you know what it is or not. It's a member of the Moss family. And we'd gather, that old goat was very fond of that, and we'd gather that parsley and feed the old goat with it. And they moved from there to Johnson County, and father was working on halves with a fellow named Johnson there in Johnson County. And
What's a half?
the landlord gets half the crop, and this sharecropper gets half the crop.
Okay.
It's commonly called a sharecropper.
Yeah, right.
But that is the way he was working, and he bought a span of he had one old big yellow mare that was his old cow pony that he rode to chase the cows when the nesters got in, when the ranchers turned them in on the nesters. And he kept her, and he bought a young pony, and the next year he worked on, he got the third and fourth. That is, he paid the third and fourth. Well, the main thing I remember at that place was the landlord had some sheep, and they were run all over the country, and when they'd go under a fence or through the fence, they'd leave wool on it. Well, we'd go out and hunt all around and gather up the wool that they left on the wire fence, and Mother spun it and knitted gloves for the other kids. And I was wanting a pair of gloves so bad and didn't have any wool. One day the sheep came up and got up on the porch, and we had a little old puppy. And so I went to scare the sheep off the porch, and I just slapped my hand and said, "Hey, hey, hey, get him." And that little dog run out and scared the sheep, and they ran through the fence, and they left wool as big as that typewriter on the wall. They was nearly ready to be shirred, you know, and the wool was about ready to shed. And I was tickled to death. I went out and gathered that wool up and carried it in and showed your mother. She got her little switched me and made me walk carry that wool every step of the way down to the landlord's house and give it to her, the woman, and tell him about me setting the dog on him. I didn't really set the dog on him. I just was trying to scare the sheep, and the dog would run anyway. I didn't know the dog would do that, but anyway, he did. And the woman shamed Mother and made her let me keep the wool, and I got my gloves and a pair of socks, and well, I don't know what all we got out of that.
And this was in Johnson County?
Yeah, it was in Johnson County. Close to a little store called George's Creek.
What part of Texas is that?
Well, it's, you know where Cleburne is? That's the county seat of Johnson County. But we was way up in the northwest corner of Johnson County.
And when you were born in southwest Texas, what was the nearest town?
I was bound southwest, down close to the line of old Mexico, close to the line of New Mexico. Really close to the line of Old Mexico. We was east of New Mexico, and we was close to the line of Old Mexico. I don't know, I've never really looked at the map to know I have to, but I've forgotten. It's only one or two counties from Mexico. That is in 1890, and Father went down there in 1886. He was down here at Denton, and he was in bad health, and went up to the doctor, and the doctor told him, said, "Set your house in order, you don't have more 30 days to live." And so he went home and sold what little he could and gave the rest of it away, and put it, what they had in a wagon, and went to West Texas. And I guess he comes here starving to death. I guess it cured his other ailments. My older brother told me that he was just a little lad. He was born in 1880. And he and Father would go, it took them a day to get up to the boneyard, that is where they killed all the buffalo. And it took them a day. The bones were getting kind of scattered by then. It'd take them a day to gather a load, and then take them another day to take the bones to Rotan, Texas, and sell them. They got $2.50 for the load of bones. And they fed the team on mesquite, and they ate jackrabbits and mesquite beans.
What did they do with the bones after they sold them? What did the company do with the bones after they bought them?
Oh, you ever see a bone handle knife?
Yep.
Well, that's where they done it. A lot of them, they made combs, but most of them went into fertilizer. And they also used them to strain sugar through. Ground it up and used bone meal to strain sugar through.
And how do you strain sugar through bone meal? How does that work?
The syrup that sugar is made of, you know, strained it to the bone meal to get to, I don't know what it was, but that was a process used for years and years. They strained the sugar through fine bone meal, and the lime in the bone help purify the sugar. They take all the color out, and then the sugar syrup would crystallize. The water would evaporate, and they leave the sugar, great big lumps of rock candy. They'd take that and grind it. That's the way they used to refine sugar. And they could take strings and suspend it in that sugar, and great big rock crystals would form on it. And they'd bring that to the store and sell it for rock candy. That used to be one of the, I used to think that was the best candy in the world. That rock candy is candy crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Great big lumps of sugar.
What was your father's name?
Thaddeus Murphy.
Thaddeus
Thadeus
Murphy
Murphy.
Rowland.
Yeah.
And what was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Mandy Margaret.
What was her maiden name?
Her name was Langston.
Langston. Okay. Where was your father from?
Father was originally from Alabama. He was born in Alabama. His father was a conscript to the Army, Confederate Army, and during the war. And
What was his name?
his name was Hiram C., I believe. I'm not sure about that, but I believe his name was Hiram. And he died when he was 20 years old with measles, back except for measles, in the Army of the Potomac, when the Confederacy marched to the Potomac to try to capture the capital. Him and two others died in the hills of Tennessee one night. It was rainy and cold, relapsed from the measles. And they buried them right where they fell. Dad went back over there when he was a teenage boy, him and one of the men that was in the Army with my grandfather, and they found what they thought was the three graves, but said the timber and everything had changed in 10 or 15 years, and so the fellow wasn't sure. But he told him, he said, I think this is your daddy's grave right here. And he picked up a flat stone there and carved his name and the date of his birth and death on it. And that's the only time he ever went back. I presume that he was exhumed and perhaps is buried in the National Cemetery at Knoxville, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. What part of Tennessee did he die in? Any idea?
It was over in the southeastern part, somewhere in the rugged hillside. You know, they just marching across the country. I presume that marker or one. I passed by Knoxville a couple of years ago. I passed by the cemetery, but I was in a chartered bus load of people. I would love to stop and searched it, but we was in a chartered bus load of senior citizens, and we was trying to get down to a certain place to spend the night, so I didn't say anything about it. But I'd have given, as fellow said, I'd give him my left hind leg, and I got out to search to see if I could have found it.
Ever hear any stories about the Civil War, the battles and all that?
No, my father and mother both were very small. Father, I guess, was about, I think, 3 years old, and mother was about 2, something like that. Father might have been as much as 5, I don't remember. Well, he was born in 1859. So he'd have been about 3 or 4 years old. And they didn't know anything about the Civil War. Some of the hardships, they said they ran out of salt, and they would dig the dirt from their smokehouses up and boil it and let it settle, and then drain the water off and boil it down to rescue the salt. I remember my great-grandfather was a preacher in Georgia, and then he moved to Alabama, and he became an herb doctor. There was no doctors. All the doctors were in the army, and the people were left without medical attention. And he had a lot of Indian friends, and he learned a lot of the Indian lore of medication. And he'd gather herbs, and he'd doctor the people the best he could. And my father, that was after the war, of course, during the Depression after the war. But he'd gotten up old enough that he went with by his grandfather and helped him gather the herbs, and he learned a lot of them. And we used a lot of herb medicine when we were growing up. Old balmony, for instance. There's two varieties. There's a large balmony and a small one, and he usually got the large one if he could find it. One of the large blooms. It grew on sandy land, the other grew on tight land, and he'd take that and brew it, and we'd take it for purgative. I think that is what black draught. You know, you can buy that old black draught now. It's a bunch of really finely powdered leaves. I think that's what it's made out of. I've taken both, and it acts just about the same.
Yeah. And what does it do for you?
And big part.
What does the balmony do for you?
It's purgative.
Yeah.
And then he had the snake root. That was a plant with a little cluster of leaves that come up with, had a tassel on the head of it, and they used that. That was a tonic. And
okay, you're talking about snake root.
like what?
You're talking about snake root.
Yes, that was. I've helped Dad dig that, and he used it for a tonic, and then sassafras bark was used also for a tonic. We used to every spring. Dad would buy it at the store. We haven't lived. Sassafras bark is not much of it this side of Arkansas, East Texas, but he'd buy it at the store. You could buy it at the store and make tea out of it, and we'd drink that tea. And it is one of the best remedies for high blood pressure that there is yet. I've known it to cure mild cases of high blood pressure yet. And then there was the old Jimson weed, we called it. That is stramonium. And I taken white swelling in my knees, and the doctors told me I'm going to have to cut my kneecaps off and scrape them. And so Dad told me, said, get some balmony and glycerin, and extract of balmony and glycerin, and mix it and make a salve, and it'll cure it. Well, I went to the drugstore, and they didn't even know what I was talking about. And so I went home, and I told Dad, I said, I can't get any stramonium. Why, he said, the yard's full of it out there. I said, what do you mean? He said, that Jimson weed. He said, that's stramonium. He said, go out there and gather a bunch of those leaves and limbs, blooms, put them in put a skillet full of lard, hog lard on, said it'll take the place of glycerin, and boil those leaves in it, and then take them out and strain it, and put a hot compass on your legs, and when you get them real hot, well, then put that grease on them, and it'll cure it, and it did. I had a little experiment. The grease was just a boiling fine, and direct it, and it was dry. And I just put in some more grease, and put in some more flowers, and it was just boiling fine, and it was dry. It didn't, just as soon as it got hot, it blubbered up great big. So the third time, I just barely let it get hot, and I took my leaves out, that time I saved me some grease, and I had the strength of three bunches of stramonium in it, but it cured the white swelling on my knees.
Now, what is white swelling?
It's caused by a bruise on the inside. I don't really know what it is, but that's what they called it. I went to three doctors, and they all told me the same thing. I thought they were spoofing me. It's caused, as far as I know, by crawling on my knees picking cotton. I crawled on my knees on ground that had rocks in it, and wife, I had just married, and wife would put in my sack, and it's nothing uncommon to go out with 100 pounds in the sack. I bruised my knees, and they both swelled up. They were pain, beating, throb at night. But it is. They told me. Well, I read my doctor book, said it would eventually, if it wasn't treated, it would form abscesses around the knees, and the abscess would burst. And said you could take this stramonium and glycerin and make a thin liquid of it and pump it into those places. Even after it got that bad, it would heal it. So I guess I had one of Dr. Pierce's, old Dr. Pierce used to have Dr. Pierce's favorite prescription, and I think it is a tonic. But anyway, he put out a doctor book, and it was good. I used it all during my early married life of raising my family. It saved me lots of doctor bills. It gave remedies, and that's where I got the stramonium and glycerin deal. After I talked to my dad about it, he told me to get stramonium and glycerin. This book told me to get stramonium and glycerin. But the drugstore didn't even know what extract of stramonium was.
You still have that book?
No. I let it get away from me somewhere in moving. I know where it went. I was out here at the farm, and we was a little crowded for room, and I had a whole bunch of that stuff like that, my keepsakes, in a trunk. And wife took it out and put it in the smokehouse. And when we moved from there, built here, well, I was a little bit slow getting it out, and the man I sold the place to stole the trunk off and burned it. I reckon he burned it, he'd done something with it, he took it away. And I lost that book, I lost all my early pictures of my family, and I lost a song book that had songs that are of my own composition in print, and a lot of keepsakes that I would have taken money for.
Yeah.
But that's all life a day's work.
Yep. Now, you mentioned the snake root and the sassafras root. How do you make the tonic out of that?
Well, really, I don't know, but well as I remember, Father just boiled it and then strained it and used it. Now, this Balmoni, he'd boil that and strain it and sweeten it, try to sweeten it, but you couldn't sweeten it, but what it would be bitter as could be. And another very potent remedy was the common broomweed. It would go all over the prairie. You take those and boil them, and take and strain it and sweeten it, and it's one of the best remedies for common cold that I've ever seen.
Now, do you take the root or the
No, it's the leaves.
The leaves.
We used them after they'd been frostbitten. We'd never use green ones. We always use them after we're frostbitten. Just go out and gather the old dead weeds and boil them and then strain it and then boil it down a little bit, sweeten it. And when you take it, it is bitter, but it has a tingling, prickly taste. And then we also used. Dad never did use it, but he told me about it, and it was commercially made with prickly ash bitters. That prickly ash grows all over Red River bottoms, and it is similar to black pepper. It has a berry on it, looks just like black pepper, and tastes a good deal like it, only it burns. It gives your skin and mouth a prickly sensation. I've had a lot of fun of it. You can take the bark, peel it off, take a little taste of it and chew it up. Don't taste anything. I got it on a man from Kansas City. I told him it was Oklahoma cinnamon, and I took a little piece of it and gave him a piece. He chewed it up. I said, it ain't got no taste. I said, open your mouth and breathe through your mouth. He opened his mouth and breathed through his mouth. Just felt like his mouth was on fire, just prickly like thorns sticking all over. And he just said, you poisoned me. And he grabbed his handkerchief out and come his wife in his mouth. I just died laughing. I told him, I said, it won't hurt you. I said, 15 minutes, it'll all quiet down. I said, you're not hurt. They used to, during Prohibition days, they'd take a lot of whiskey and put some of that prickly ash in it and call it prickly ash bitters. And they could sell it that way, you know. And there was worlds and worlds of people that get drunk on prickly ash bitters. But that's all it was whiskey with this bark in it, and they'd strain the bark out, you know, and it would color the whiskey kind of a dark amber color. And this old boy then, after he found out it wouldn't kill him, he wanted to know, said, have you got any more of that? And I told him, yes. I want every bit you've got. And so he said, I'm going to have me some fun. He said, my wife is always playing a practical joke on me. He said, I'm going to get her a good one. So he told me later when he came back that he took it home and gave it to his wife and said she done as like he did. She thought she was killed. And said after she found out it wasn't going to kill her, said, well, her and Dress said, we've got a date for a party tonight. Said, that's what we're going to do. Said, I'm supposed to help entertain. And they'd get them in there about 2 or 3 at a time and give them that bark, you know. And after they'd rave and roar around, they'd tell them about it, and then they'd be in on the next bunch to get a next bunch in. Said, we had more fun. And he came back and said, if you see any of it, why, I said, I want to get a supply if we'd ever run across any that day, though. I was working for Singer Company, and he was general supervisor out of Kansas City. He came down. Funniest thing one day, we was driving along. He'd never seen a skunk. And we was driving along late one evening, a great big old skunk. Oh, he was pretty. He was hopping along with his tail up over his back and a snow white streak right down his back, you know. And he lit in trying to run over it. He said, I'm going to run over that and take it home to my wife. I kept telling him, don't you run over that, don't you run over that. And I saw he was going to run over it anyway, and I reached up and grabbed his wheel and turned it around. And it made him mad. He said, I want to take that home and give it to my wife. I said, mister, if you'd run over that, you couldn't even park your car in the garage tonight. You couldn't have stayed in the hotel. Oh, I said, it couldn't have stunk like that. Next morning we passed down by there, and somebody had run over it right close to where we passed it. And he said, oh, my Lord, what is that? I said, that's a pretty thing you want to take home to your wife. He said, it couldn't be. I said, back up and I'll show it to you. He backed up and was laying just off the pavement right down below town here. And he says, I'm sure glad you pulled my car around.
Well, any other herb medicines that you have besides the balamoni, snakeroot, sassafras, jimson, and broomweed? What about cough medicine?
Well, that broomweed's a cough medicine.
It is?
It's an expectorant. Also, it, you know, it's sort of like, feel something like camphor as it goes into your lungs, and it gives your lungs a good feeling. Camphor is the nearest thing. You've used camphor, if nothing else, maybe smoked a camphor cigarette anyway, or camphor cough drop, and you can feel it in your lungs, and it feels good in your lungs. Well, let's see. There was a snake root, and what is they use snake root for? Snake root is they use it in the pharmaceutical process, but I don't know what they call it now. But it is used. It's diuretic. What do you call it? It stops secretions. And they use that, I believe, in cough medicine too, to stop the secretion of the mucous membranes. And it is a tall plant like that, doesn't have any leaves on it, and it'll have a little, oh, it'll have 3 or 4 leaves, but not many. And they're a pale gray color and kind of velvety. And they've got a bloom that is not really a bloom. It doesn't have any beauty, I mean, it's just white, opens up. And the root is what they use. And we've dug the root, and I don't remember now what we used it for. But anyway, I've dug the root and used it. Oh, I believe it's to cure, it's a tonic to cure scrofula, if you know what scrofula is.
Not really.
Scrofula is a residue of a hereditary syphilis. In other words, that's the sores that break out on the legs and behind the ears of the 3rd and 4th generation of people who have had syphilis in the family earlier. And
okay. As a child, what kind of chores you do around the house?
well, we lived on the farm, of course. My earliest job was feeding the pigs, gathered up the eggs, feed the chickens, and we used to buy nux vomica. That is what strychnine is made of, and it's a little green, flat piece of sort of about that big, and about twice as thick as about the size of a quarter, and about twice or 3 times as thick. We'd buy that, and it was my job to cut it up, and I finally made me a grater, and I'd grate it up. We'd feed it to our chickens. It's a tonic, taken in small quantities. Strychnine's a tonic, but it is a tonic, and it is, I forget the name for it, but anyway, it'll kill an animal that is born with its eyes closed and won't hurt one that isn't. And so we gave it to our chickens. It didn't hurt them, but the hawk that caught them with that in their craw, it killed the hawk. And we'd also take a little piece of it and make it in a stiff dough and stick it in the top of a chicken's head, because the head is the first thing the hawk eats. And if we happened to get that in the hawk's gizzard, craw, that was goodbye, Mr. Hawk. And we used it altogether. Then we also used red pepper as a vermifuge. Yeah, that made me think another. Jerusalem oak is a vermifuge, and it's used today. You can buy it, the extract of it, but it is a vermifuge.
A vermifuge?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
That takes the worms out of children.
Okay.
Or adults either. You can, they would starve a child and feed it, give it this vermifuge, and would take the worms out. People don't have worms like they used to when they drink branch water. They'd get the worm eggs in the branch water, and everybody used to drink branch water. In fact, there's a lot of people haul their water from a branch, and they'd get the worm eggs in their system from that water. And it's nothing uncommon for people to have tapeworms, and they'd eat like hogs and stay as poor as a rail, and have stomach cramps. And the doctors finally learned that I think vermifuge was the first thing they used, but they found this Jerusalem oak. Do you know what Jerusalem oak is?
No.
Out around the barn rotter places, you run into something that has an exceedingly loud flavor, but it's not not too pleasant and not very offensive. It's just a good flavor. But that is what that is, Jerusalem oak, and they use the leaves. And another one is poke root. For the itch, they'd make a concoction that is boiled poke root in water and bathe in it. You don't want to get it too strong though. Right after World War II, the boys from Europe brought back the itch. And oh, it was awful. It come near killing me, I believe, in anything I ever had. And although I knew all the remedies too, but one of my wife's brothers lived down on Red River here. He told his wife he boiled just went down and lots of poke down there. He went out and boiled a lot of roots. He'd make a great big root like potato. And he boiled those roots, and he boiled us a washpot full of them, and took the water and poured it in a barrel down by his well. And his well was off down to the barn. His house was off down there some little bit. And he told her, said, when I come in from work tonight, I fill that barrel of water, I'm gonna take a bath in it. Said, you have some clean clothes laid out there at the well, I'll put them on. So she saw him come in from work, put his team in a lot. Right, she heard him scream. And she looked out in time to see him going bouncing down the hill nude. And there was a spring down under the hill there, and the hogs had a big waller down there, you know. He got in that. He had it about 4 times too strong with poke root, and it was resting him. And he went down that hill and got out in the hog water. She went running out there. She wasn't matter with him, and he was down there in that hog water trying to cool that poke root off. He said it cured the itch, but it peeled him off all over too.
Ever have any trouble with the Indians out in West Texas?
Hmm?
Ever have any trouble with the Indians out in West Texas?
No, I never saw any Indians in West Texas. Never saw any till I come back to Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in West Texas. Now where we lived when I was a boy, there might have been some Indians, so I don't think there was. But we came on up to Bosque County, from there to Johnson County, from there to Hood County, and from there, from Hood County to Childress County, and from Childress County over to Jackson County, Oklahoma, Childress County, Texas, Jackson County, Oklahoma, and from Jackson County, Oklahoma, we went back to Cook County, Texas, and then from Cook County, Texas, up through to Oklahoma here, and then I went from here to Colorado in 23, it was fall of 23, stayed in Colorado till the January of 25, and we started from Colorado in a wagon in January 25 and came up a blizzard that night, and it was 2 degrees below zero the next morning. And we had an overjet on the wagon, and we slept in the overjet. I had a worm dry Ford truck, and there was 4 wagons of us. We had 4 horses to the wagon in abreast, and we was about 31 days on the road, right through the dead of winter. We passed through Texoma, Oklahoma, one Sunday morning, and it was snowing, and it was, I guess, around zero or close to zero. We never saw a human. There's all in the house. We could see the smoke boiling out of the stovepipe. We never saw a human as we come through. There's only about, I think, 2 stores, the church house, the schoolhouse. And
What year was that?
it takes home, that's in the Panhandle of
I
Texas.
mean, what year did you come through?
That was in 1925, January 1925. And we came on down through the Panhandle, on back down through, down to Montague County, Texas.
What part of Colorado did you settle in?
We was about 7 miles southeast of Kim. Kim's right in the southeast corner,
Yeah.
and we was right in the southeast corner of Colorado.
How come you moved up there to Colorado?
Beg pardon?
How come you moved to Colorado? How come you moved up to Colorado?
Well, I had a brother that'd been up there for years, and land was cheap, and I sold a place down here, got $4,700 for 80 acres. It'd been over $10,000 for it, but didn't take it, and the depression came of 1919 depression came, and I got $4,700 for it, and I had about $1,500, $1,700. I went out there and bought a half section of land for $1,500, and it had a telephone by the door, and there's all tillable but about 10 acres, and had a well and windmill on it, and schoolhouse on the corner, and had $1,000 loan on it, and I traded an old boy a Model T that I swapped a shotgun for, and overhauled it for his equity in it, and I think I gave him $200 in money in that old Model T. Then I also got his everything he had, his horses, and I got a span of mules, and a horse and a mare, and his plow tools, and a filly that I never did see. I would trade for her, didn't trade for a range delivery, but she was on the range, but he was to deliver her. And so then I turned around and swapped him those 4 head for 18 head of those range horses. Never had a rope on them except when they were branded. And I broke those out and tried to make a crop. But I looked out there one day, and my neighbor we just had a snowstorm, and it just quit snowing the day before. He was out there with all the clothes he could walk in, had his feet watered up in great big wads of rags, planting corn. Had his lister set to go in the ground as deep as he'd go, and he was going about that deep, just scraping the top of the ground off. And there was places the snow drifts were so deep he couldn't hardly get through it. And I told my wife, I said, if I have to plant in this kind of weather, I just won't plant. I didn't plant, but when it fired up, I planted, got a good stand, and the corn grew up pretty nicely, and it's silked and tousled, and that's all it done. That old man made pretty good corn.
So you came back in 25?
That was in 25.
Yeah.
And that was 24 that we was out there. The most beautiful flowers I ever saw in my life grew wild in Colorado. And the flowers like petunias and stuff like that we have here, were going out there just in profusion, and they got up about that high. Just the most beautiful flowers, and those old cacti had the most beautiful roses, only there were wax roses, and there was all colors. It was red and yellow, spotted, all colors. And what they call Spanish jaggers, you know what I'm talking about?
The Spanish daggers, yeah.
A Spanish jaggers has a silk sheath over the thorns and makes the thorns look like they're pretty big. But you just try to touch one of those. Just touch it. You don't have to push one, just touch it. And you take a pair of pliers to get the thorn out.
How come?
It is so sharp. It's sticking through that sheath. It's so sharp. If you just touch it, it'll stick in your finger, and it has beard on it, and you catch hold of that away, and you might, if it don't get very deep, you might jerk it and jerk it out, but you can't pull it out. You can stick it in the back of your hand, it'll lift the skin away up, and we hit them in, first I saw it was in Childers. I was breaking out some sod and working 3 mules to a saw kit, and little old Spanish jagger about that high with 4 or 5 joints on it and several thorns. One of the mules hit it with her foot, got it in her foot. Well, she reached down to get it out, and she got it in her nose. And so she comes crying, bawling, and I knew it was hurting, so I had a pair of pliers on myself. I went around. First I went around there and got a hold of it. My fingers, I couldn't pull it at all. I got a hold of my pliers, and I had to jerk it. I couldn't just pull it out, I just had to jerk it out. And I jerked them out. And after that, every time they'd hit one of them, they'd start bawling. They got to where they didn't try to get out of their teeth. They'd start bawling. Bah. I knew what was the matter. I'd go around, take their foot up, take those pliers, jerk by the pliers. But
you mentioned you moved around quite a bit as a child in Texas.
did what?
You said you moved quite a bit in
Yes,
Texas.
yeah.
How come your father moved around so much?
Well, the grass was greener on the other side of the hill. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
The grass was greener on the other side of the hill. We moved from where we was working on the halves. That man only worked people on the halves. So Dad didn't work on the halves anymore. So he goes over to another community and close to Nemo, and he rented a place over there, 3rd and 4th, and we moved over there, and the only way we made soap then, I don't reckon it was in the line to the grocery store, I don't know, but anyway, we had an ash hopper, and with great big box with a sloping floor, and up 2 or 3 feet off the ground, and we pour all the ashes in that box. Well, when Mother wanted to make soap, I'd go out there and scratch a little hole in the top of that, and I'd pour water in there. I'd ask her how much she wanted, and she'd tell me, and I'd pour about, if she wanted 3 buckets of water, 3 buckets of live water, I'd pour 4 buckets in there. And then I set the bucket down here at the bottom where it sloped down. We had it fixed so that the water don't run to one place. We just catch that water as it run through the ashes, take it, put it in the wash pot. Then I'd build a fire around the wash pot, and I'd boil that water until Mother'd come out there and stick a feather in it. And if when she stuck the feather in it, if she'd take it out of the way and skin all the feathers off the stem, why, it was ready to put the meat in.
And so if it skinned the feather, it was ready.
If it skinned the feathers, it was ready to put the meat in to make soap. And then she'd boil it till the lye eat all the soap up, eat all the meat up, and then it was lye. And if she boiled it too strong, the lye the soap wouldn't form hard. If she didn't get enough in it, it wouldn't form hard. But you could tell which was which. If it had too much lye in it, why, it'd be kind of juicy in the dark. The juice would be real dark. But if it didn't have enough in it, it'd be kind of like grease sitting on top. The top of the soap would be greasy. So if that case, she'd put it in and boil it some more, boil it down stronger. Maybe put some more lye water in it, and she'd take that lye water and put corn in it, boil it down, and put corn in it. And when she'd rub it this way and the skins would come off, then she'd take it out and she'd rub it all and get all the skin off of it and wash that off. And then she'd have to wash her hands in vinegar to eat her hands up. And we made hominy. She'd make a great big pot of hominy, and of course usually made it in the winter time. It wouldn't sour for a long time. Put it up. But the first year we lived down we cooked on the stove, cooked on the fireplace when I began to remember there when we was working on the halves. Get up every morning, Dad would, and build a fire in the fireplace. And Mother'd go in there and take the old Dutch oven, and she'd rake a bunch of coals out, set the Dutch oven on it, and then she'd take a bunch more coals and put on top of it, have her bread in there. And in the summertime, we'd when corn got too hard for roasting ears, we'd take it and we'd grate it, and we'd take that grated mush, and Mother'd make bread out of it, and boy, that bread was good.
Do you remember? Oh, go ahead.
Roast potatoes. She'd take the old sweet potatoes, and dig a place over there at the back of the fire, and peel it. First put a bunch of coals down, then put a bunch of layer of ashes on it, and put her potatoes in there, lay some more ashes on it, and put some more coals over the top of that. And she knew just how long to leave it in there, and she'd dig them out. Old potatoes would be just fine as could be, and peeling off while you'd get all the ashes off.
Have you heard any stories about the Spanish-American War?
Beg pardon?
The Spanish-American War.
I remember it, yes.
1898, 99.
Yeah, I remember.
What do you remember about that?
Well, all I remember was when they sink the battleship. Why, the only news we had was the weekly Dallas Morning Semi-Weekly News. We got it twice a week. And when that came out, it told about sinking the ship. Of course, I was about 11. Let's see, when was that? In
98.
98. I was 8 years old, and I regretted it very much. And when Roosevelt charged San Juan Hill, and it come out, had a picture of it in the paper. Oh, we was very elated about it. That's about all I remember, something like that. But I remember the Galveston flood in 1900.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, it rained, hard rain, about 3 days and nights, and wind from the southeast, high. And of course, like I said, the only news we had was the semi-weekly farm news. And it'd tell about it, and it'd have practically the whole issue would be about the flood and what is going on. We read that continually, but I remember us children sitting around in the house, and we played geese and fox, and we played authors, and I also took quinine in cold coffee, powdered quinine in cold coffee, and that's why I never did like coffee till I was better than 60 years old. I didn't drink any. I detested, but none of the family drank coffee but Dad, and he drank a cup for breakfast, and they buy the coffee with beans and had a mill up on the side of the wall, and Dad had put it in. He's not laughing. They bought black pepper and whole berries too. One day Mother told me to beat some black pepper up. I put it in a rag and beat it, I thought, by the way, I know how I'll do that. I'll grind it, Paul's coffee meal, and then I'll grind some meal in it and give the meal to chickens. Get all the pepper out. I didn't know about the oil, that's in it. Next morning, Dad got up and made him a cup of coffee, and he said his byword was, by Jupiter, who's been grinding pepper in my meal? I said, I did, Paul, but I ground meal to it to get it all out. But didn't you know that the oil and pepper, you couldn't grind it out with meal? So I had to tear the old coffee mill all to pieces and give it a real genuine scrubbing, which wasn't much of a chore. Long about that time, the only gun we had was an old double-barrel shotgun that had been shot so much the barrel was plumb thin on the edge, rest of the left barrel. Our older brother and me would go rabbit hunting, and the rabbits knew just exactly how far that old gun would shoot. They'd get just beyond and sit down and just sit there. And we'd shot at one rabbit about 5 or 6 times. He'd run on a little piece, and we'd load again, get out there. Our brother wouldn't try to shoot at one on the run. He would try to get him still. So he'd shoot, and the rabbit just jump up and run on a little piece, sit there and kind of wipe his face, this way, and flop his ears and look around, just teasing us. So I was all the time climbing around on my hands and knees and looking for things, and I'd found an old Winchester, 44 Winchester ball that was braided to there's just about as big one way as the other, but it was slab-sided, wasn't round. And I had a mini ball that had hit something and was braided, and I showed my brother, and he said, let me have them. And he took them and wrapped a rag around both of them, put them in that shotgun, and put in a charge and a half of powder behind it. Well, we didn't find a thing to shoot at. You couldn't unload the things very handy, So he took it home, put it up in the right, and didn't say anything to Paul about it. Well, we had a pigeon box out there with a ladder up to it where us kids go up there and look at the eggs, and the little chickens. And the little screw child got to catch their pigeons. And so I was out feeding the horses one morning, and I heard that old gun go. No, it was one night, just about dark. I heard that old gun go, pow, wow, and oh my Lord, it busted the barrel. And I run to the house, and Paul still had his arm on his shoulder going round and round. By Jupiter, by Jupiter. And he saw me, he said, what in the world did you boys have in that gun? I told him what we had in it, and he said, I think it broke my shoulder all to pieces. It didn't, but he sure raised a pump knot on it. I went to look for the owl. Dad was a crack shot. I went to look for the owl. All I could find was the ears and the wings and and I believe both the legs was not into the body there. He just hit that thing right in the center and just carried it all off. Along about that time, my brother kept trying to get me to go to the barn. I was afraid of the dark, and I went to the barn, and he was going to give me a long slate pencil to go to the barn and get him 2 ears of corn. He said, now I want good ears. Feel around and get some good ears. So I was feeling around to get the good ears, and directly he grabbed me in the side and said, and I whirled around, and I'd like to knock him down with one of those ears of corn. I still am goosey that way. If I'm out there and you come up and don't you touch me, I'll hit you with whatever I got in my hand, just like I did him. There's no old man in town here knew that, but he delighted in coming and catching me, and so one day he came down there and I had a 14-inch monkey wrench in my hand. No, the day he came down, I hit a kid with a 14-inch monkey wrench, but he came down and I had a knife in my hand. I was doing something with one of these big old linoleum knives, sharp pointed, you know. And he came around and he grabbed me and I whirled around and he was a little too close to me. I hit my fist up the side of his head. If he'd been just about 6 inches further, I'd cut his head off. And I hit with all the power I had. I had begged him, I said, don't do that, I'll kill you some of these days. I do it before I think, it's reaction. But he delighted in it. And he turned plumb white in the face when he saw that knife. I said, I told you not to do that. I said, I'll kill you some days. I don't know what the Lord say, but I don't figure I'd be to blame.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the Depression of 1907.
It was pretty tough. We was living on a place 2 miles east of Comanche Peak. That is a noted peak. You get down south of Fort Worth, you can see it from everywhere out there. And we were living about 2 miles east of that on what they call the old Alf place. Alf was a Negro, and he'd killed a man. He'd cut him all to pieces and killed him. And he had that place and had it paid for, but it cost him everything to get out of it, and he finally went to penitentiary for 2 years. But anyway, we was living there, and we was getting pretty well on our feet. And Dad had rented a place of pasture land over there, and he'd bought some cattle. He paid $96 a head for them, I believe it was. There were 17 head of them. And he owed a big lot of the money. And he had about 15 or 20 head of cattle. And for that depression come, he sold that whole business for, I believe it was $40 a head. He lost, after keeping them a year, past a year, and getting the gain on them, he lost nearly 50% of what he paid on them. And it was pretty tough. That throwed us back, set us back, way back financially. In fact, it broke us. But you know, farmers don't know when they're broke.
What caused that depression, 1907?
Well, I was really too young to know, but I think it is speculation on Wall Street is what they blamed it with. People things were going so good, you could buy anything for future delivery and double your money on it, you know. And so a lot of these big financiers had bought for future delivery, and then of course those who were trying to make the market, they broke the market, and they had to deliver, and they broke them. and it broke everybody. And the way I understand it, that is what happened. You know, we had another pretty bad depression in, let's see, when was that? In
You mentioned 1919.
1990.
What caused that depression?
I don't know. Don't really know, but I know I went to town with a bale of cotton one day. I didn't know the cotton had got wet. I had a sheet over it, and I went to town. It blew up a norther just about the time it blew up the norther the night before. It had been cold for several days, way below freezing, but it blew up another norther that night. But anyway, I gimmed that bale of cotton off and got a 625-pound bale of cotton out of about 2,100-pound of bowl. Should have been about a 500-pound, maybe a little less than 500-pound. Anyway, they docked me 100 pounds for moisture. When there's gin it, you could see it looked like snow flying around in the gin house, you know. And it peeled those seeds because they was wet, you know. It just peeled them clean. And I went to sell it. I got 3 cents a pound, I believe it was. They docked me 100 pounds on it, and I got a little less than $20 for the bale of cotton. And I started home. I lived about 7 miles northwest of El Dorado, and I started home just about dark. It was late before they got me ginned off. And I had to face that norther all the way home. I got out and trotted along the side of the wagon. I got home, my wife had done gone to bed, and had an old monkey stove, and we was burning coal. She'd filled it full of coal before she went to bed, but it burned down to nothing but cinders. I went in and took a little old poker about that long, jerked the glove off of one hand and stirred those coals up, and you see that finger is smaller from there to here.
Mm-hmm.
It froze that finger off there, froze all those fingers off, but that one more particular froze it off. That finger was round like these, but you see it froze it off. It looked like an old rooster's comb, if you ever saw one that had been frostbit, turned blue and black, and it got to itching. I took my pocket knife and cut that black stuff off. Flashed about an inch all the way, it's feather edge up here down to, it is about an 1/8 of an inch down on the tip there. I just owned all those fingers on the left hand. Now the right hand, I kept it in my pocket. And I learned to, I thought, after I'd stirred the stove up, I thought I knew better, but I just didn't think about it. I was so cold when I went in. So after I'd stirred the stove up, my hand come aching, why then I just put my hand in my pocket and just walked till I got warmed up, walked in the house there out of the wind. But I've got one here.
Yeah.
That's carry over from the time I got my ears frostbit in Colorado. It hasn't been making that sore until about 2 years ago. It got to peeling up there, making that, and that one I've been having quite a time with it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned you were breaking sod with mules.
Doing what?
You mentioned that you were breaking sod with mules.
Yes.
Do you prefer plowing with mules or horses?
Well, with me, it doesn't make a good deal of difference because I can handle animals. But the majority of people would rather plow with mules because mules seldom balks. But horses are inclined to balk if you don't know how to handle them. In fact, there'd be some of them balk that nobody can handle. I found one that I couldn't work in all my life. But mules are steadier. They balk as a rule. But outside of that, I don't see much difference. They're about the same. You have to get a team that are gated together. You can get one that's fast and another that's slow, and you have a very disagreeable team. And one just can't walk as fast as the other, just not built that way. And the other's built to walk fast. Dad had a Spanish mule once. They worked just this way. One's way back here and the other's way up there. but we drove with Spanish mules across Pease River. One of them was weighed about 250 pounds more than the other one would, I guess. And I'd never been in quicksand, but an old timer at the wagon yard the day before we got into quicksand told me, he said, now, well, the day before we went into it, they had lost a printing press with a 4-horse team in there and never did find the wagon or the press either. And so he told me, he said, now it'll be safe. It's down now. The river will be safe if you keep moving, but don't slow down. He said, if you feel something feel like you're running over rocks, he said, you're starting to sink in the sand. And so brother and me was driving a team of mules to a heavily loaded wagon. We had on about 2,000 pounds, and that's a pretty heavy load for one team. And my father was driving a hack with a family ahead of us. Of course, he didn't have any trouble. We got in there, and that wagon began to feel like we was running over rocks, and we had got us some whip before we got there. And we was whipping those poor mules, and one of those mules, I believe I could crawl under his traces over his back. He was giving it all he had. I had fastened her stay chain back before I got in there so she could pull all she could pull without bothering the other. We got out on the other side there, both mules were trembling all over. They was so exhausted. We went around and hugged those old mules.
Mm-hmm. What is the difference between a sod plow and a regular walking plow?
A regular sod plow just has a point and some bars. It doesn't have a moldboard. It has bars for moldboard. And the sod plow is set flatter than a regular plow. And a sod plow doesn't have frog on it. Doesn't have any frog on it. Now the frog is this piece over here to the left. It has a rod under there, but doesn't have a regular frog. Mm-hmm. And the regular frog holds the point level. This sod plow, it doesn't have that. And the sod plow and the sod plow has a knife runs up here at the edge. And if it's a 16-inch sod plow, you'll just turn over 16 inches of sod, just as deep as you're plowing. And they use those, of course, to break they pull a lot lighter than a regular plow because those rods don't turn the sod over like a regular plow. A regular plow comes up here and it turns it plumb over. Well, put one of those in sod, the dirt sticks pretty bad. With a sod plow, you can plow it, the water oozing out of it, it won't stick after you get it bright. And they turn that over when it's real wet, and they'll just go around there. They usually use a 12-inch, 10 or 12-inch. Then they'll just go along, take a big knife, and cut that sod in two, and have a board down the side of it, and they'll ooze that sod up on that board, take it and lay it down in the wall they're building for their sod house. That's the way they build a sod house. And if they don't put any slime between them, why, when that sod dries, snow will blow through the walls. I bought a sod house for the lumber that was on it while I was in Colorado, and it had been built without any slime in between it. And well, of course it was dry, and the grass was green when it was built, and the grass was still in there. It had been built 5 or 6 years, but the grass was still in there, just as pretty and bright as it was the days put in there. Mm-hmm. But usually they put slime in between, and then usually they'll take and make up some real stiff mud and just smear the walls with it. And they have the roof run out so far that the water from the roof don't run down on those walls. And those walls, once baked, they're there for the longest. Now, that's one way of building a sod house. Another is to build sod brick. And that way they dig a pit, and they'll put dirt in there, a lot of water, and they'll put in a lot of straw, any kind of straw they can get. And they'll get in there, usually Mexicans do, get in there with their feet and tromp that until the sod and the dirt are all mixed up together. And they'll take pitchforks and stir it, and they'll tromp it and stir it till they get that all mixed up together. Then they'll put it in molds. and let it dry. That's sun-dried brick. And then they build their houses out of that. And those houses in Santa Fe, New Mexico, have been built for, well, some of the oldest houses in the United States. You think they're rock houses. I went out there 3 or 4 years ago, and I saw houses that was built out of old adobe brick that I thought were rock houses. I would have if I hadn't been told before I went to see them what they're built out of. And there's one house there that was built in 1604, I believe it was. It was built as a hacienda about 6 miles from town, and it has, I believe, 42 rooms. Don was building it for his bride, and it was a palatial place. They're using it now for a museum, and those Indians, Mexican Indians, will take their handicraft ware and sit around on the floor around there and sell it around in front of it and around it, and sell their handicraft.
How many wagons did you have on the farm?
How many wagons?
Yeah.
Well, that varied. Most people just had one wagon, but if it's pretty prosperous place, they might have 3 or 4.
What brand did you have? What kind of wagon?
Well, ones I usually had, you couldn't tell what brand it was because you were old. I never did own a new wagon, but my father bought a new Peter Shuttler once, and he had a span of young horses, and him and another man went to Cleveland to market and carried some cotton, and coming back those horses ran away, and he had bought a jug of syrup. They bought them. Then the groceries had the syrup in barrels, and you want to see some syrup, they'd go there and take a little piece of paper and let a little syrup out on the paper, and you could taste of it, and you could get sorghum molasses, this kind of sorghum, that kind of sorghum. You could get Cairo or white Cairo or red Cairo, and Dad had bought a gallon or 2-gallon jug, I believe it was, of white Cairo, and we'd never eat Cairo. The team run away and busted them, and it was just all over the wagon. It was dripping over the wagon bed, and us kids go out there, lick it up, stick our finger in, lick it off, eat most of that. It's coming over the wagon bed. What did we care for dirt? It tasted good. But that was Peter Shuttler, 2 3/4. Now,
What do you mean 2 3/4?
It means it's 2 3/4 inches where the skein, that's the metal part that goes into the wheel, fits onto the axle. The axle is 2 3/4. The mouth of that skein is 2 3/4 inches. Now, a 3-inch would be 3 inches there. 3 1/4 would be 3 1/4 inches there. 3 1/4 is a heavy wagon.
What kind of maintenance do you have to pull on a wagon?
That's what.
What kind of maintenance did you have to do on the wagon to keep it going?
Management.
No, maintenance on the wagon.
Oh, well, the main thing was the tires. After the wagon begun to get old, most farmers never did have a wagon in a shed, and consequently the moisture swelling up and drying up and swelling up, and after a while the fellows, that's the wood that goes around on the inside of the tire, would get to where they would shrink and exceeding the dry weather and be loose. The tires would be loose on them, and when they were first built, they were fastened on with bolts, but when they were once shrunk, they took the bolts out because the tire you couldn't get the tire back where the bolts would go in. And anyway, they would shrink them. At first, they'd just put the tire in a place of water, and they'd take the fellows then, put a wedge in between them, and then they'd heat that tire red hot and slip it on that wheel, and then roll it into a hole of water. And that tire would expand so it would go over that enlarged wheel, you see. You have to put those wedges between the spokes, between the fellows, that would make the wheel larger. And that's what they call shrinking the tires. When we were coming from Colorado, I was out west of Wichita Falls one night. I was walking along beside of my wagon, and I saw a tire rolling down the hill. And I looked, well, where'd that tire come from? And I stopped and looked, it's off my wagon. When I'd started to pull up on I'd got off the pavement for something. We'd stopped, I believe, for something. And when I went to pull back up on the pavement, The pavement was just about a half-inch higher than the ground, and so I just pulled it on angle, and it pushed that tar off. Well, as soon as I saw it, I pulled off the pavement, and there was a little creek right ahead of us. Happened to have a hole of water there in the creek where they dug dirt out to put on the roadway, and so I stopped, and there was a lot of old bridge timber or something in the land there. Anyway, there was a lot of timber of some kind there. Anyway, we built up a big fire that night in a circle, and we took tars off. I think we shrunk 8 tars that night. We'd take a piece of, we didn't have any wedge to put between the spokes, but we had some old ducking out of tars, and we'd put that on the rim, and then heat those tars real hot, step them on there we'd usually have 3 pair of pliers, 1 pair of pliers a piece. We'd slip that tar on there, and grab a piece of wire around it right quick so it wouldn't slip off and roll it off in that whole water. And next morning we got them out as soon as it cooled. That wheel was so tight it was dish. But I mean, the spokes were leaned over, and we got the tires too tight, really. But never did have any more trouble with that wagon tires. The one I had was a broad tire wagon. It was a 3.5-inch tire. Brothers had the narrow tires, 2.5 inches. But we shrunk all of his, shrunk, I believe, all of mine, and shrunk one of his daddy-in-laws, I think, that night.
When did you first move to Oklahoma?
I came to Oklahoma first, I believe, in 1960. No, I came to Oklahoma first when I moved from Childress County over to Jackson County in 1908.
How'd you come? By wagon?
By wagon. Dad and me moved over there, and I hadn't been married for a little while. I married in August. We moved over in December. My wife drove my buggy. We had a buggy, and my wife drove it, and I drove a wagon, and Dad drove a wagon, and I believe one of the brothers drove a wagon. Then some of the other boys drove some cattle. We moved across. I believe we made it in one day. It seems like we did.
How come you moved to Jackson County?
Dad bought a place up there.
How big?
He bought 160 acres.
And where was it located?
It is about 6 miles north of El Dorado. Then I rented the place right south of him, and it come a flood along in July and broke his big tank down, but there's about a week running down. It run down and flooded my maize patch. I made about 60 bushel of maize to acre. I had the finest maize I ever saw. And I made half a bale of cotton. My cotton didn't get but about that tall, I guess. But I made a half bale to acre. And I bought a little place 80 acres west of there that fall. And Dad swapped my place and his 2 places. He had 2. He'd bought another place, and he swapped my place and his 2 places for city lots on Capitol Hill in Oklahoma City. And they had $20 per lot against them, and the people we bought it from was to pay that off. But they failed to pay it off, and we couldn't pay it off, and so we lost what we got. But they got their farms. I don't guess they intended to pay it off, really.
How long you stay in Jackson County?
Let me see. We must have stayed about 3 years in Jackson County.
You fare pretty well out there?
Huh?
Did you fare pretty well in Jackson County?
Yeah, I did pretty well. I learned something everywhere I go. But one year I farmed. There was a prairie dog town on the back end of my daddy's. Back end of my daddy's place. The one he was renting. We were both renting then. And anyway, there was a prairie dog town there, and prairie dogs usually eat everything that up for no telling far around. And I was talking to one of the neighbors about it. Well, he said, that's no problem. He said, plant your row of castor beans down that fence row, and said, you won't be bothered prairie dogs. I said, is that a fact? He said, that's a fact. And so I planted a row of castor beans down the fence row, and wasn't anything ever bothered. One day I was plowing down there. I saw an old prairie dog come running out towards the fence row there, and I come back to the next round. Well, I saw him go back to the den and just drop over dead just before he got into the den. Well, I went out there and picked him up and looked at him. Not a scratch on him anywhere as I could see. And I went and looked, and he had there was prints of his teeth on one of those castor bean stalks, where he just scraped that white skin off the this white skin off that stalk. It killed him that quick. And the wolves got to bothering my watermelons. They just eat them up. Neighbor says, well, that's no problem. Said, get you some soda pop bottle caps and just just twist them and drive them in, put one on every watermelon. Or he said, you can just take your hand and rub over them. Or take her and just scrape each watermelon. Said, if you just rub your hand over them, said, that's good till it rains. And said, if you scrape them though, said, they'll never touch that melon. So I did. I didn't lose any more watermelons. They're shrewd little boys.
As a child, what kind of games did you play?
I never played much of any games. I get about as much amusement out of work as most people get out of a game, but I played dominoes. I used to play dominoes a little. When us kids was at home, we played geese and fox and checkers.
What's geese and fox?
Well, it's similar to dominoes, only we make our own game. We took 2 grains of corn and cut the heart out of them, and they were the fox. And they sat here on these. There's come down here with 8 points, and then it was in a cross, and it's sort of like a checkerboard, only it was a cross, and the cross went up there, and there's 8 points up there, and 8 points down, 8 points up here, and there was 16 points in the middle, I believe. And you play it sort of like checkers. You go up here, and if you get a chance where you can jump, the men can't jump a fox. All they can do is hem them up. But the fox can jump the men. The other man had, I think it is 30 men, and the man that had the fox just had 2 fox. And they can't jump the fox, but they can hem them up. That's the only way they've got to do. If you can hem the other man's fox up, you won the game. But if he gets all your geese, he's won the game. And we also played authors, which is a sort of like playing cards, only the authors are numbered. The 6s and the 8s, the 1s and the 2s and 3s and the 4s and the 5s and the 6s and the 8s. And, I don't remember now how I played it. It's been so long, but anyway, it was played. There were so many cards. I think there's 8 cards to the deck. There was 8 8s and 8 6s and 8 so forth. So many, I don't remember how many now. But anyway, sort of like playing cards. Only I don't know how to play cards. I never played a hand of cards in my life. But anyway, you call for certain things, and or you could reach over, I believe, and choose out of the other fellow's hand what you wanted. Of course, you didn't know what you was getting. He had the back of it turned to you, and it was all supposed to be just alike. And so you reached over and choose. But anyway, when you got all of one kind, you laid that one down. And if I forgot, it's been so long time. It's been 50 years, I guess, since I was 60, since I played a game of authors. My kids used to play them, but I forgot how to play them now. But that it's you can buy them yet.
Where'd you start school?
When did I start school? I started school at Georges Creek in Johnson County. Georges Creek's the second place we lived instead of Nemo. Nemo was the first place we lived. Georges Creek's the second place. And I started school, a fellow named Spinks was teacher. And the schoolhouse was in the corner of a cemetery. About all I can remember of it, it had the biggest bluebonnets I ever saw, all over the back end of that cemetery. And his summer school, and we'd get out there and pull those bluebonnets and play with them, and we got a hold of some sticks and made a little wigwam and covered it with bluebonnets. And I remember he gave me out the word shirt, and I left the R out. And I told him I spelled it. He hit me across the shoulder with a switch. I remember that. That's about as near as I ever come getting a whipping, except one school. I got about 50 whoopings at one school. In fact, me and another boy or two broke the school up.
How'd you do that?
It was a woman teacher, and I guess it was the second school I ever went to. And it was in Mitchell Bend, Texas. And the first day I went was the second day of school. But I didn't know where the spelling lesson was. So I went up and asked the teacher where the lesson was, and I just got back to seat, and I got the second word when she called the lesson, called the class. That was the first class of the day. And she called it up there, and of course I missed it. I was at the foot of the class, and the ones up the front got the first word, and I'd only seen 2 words of it, so I missed everything. And practically everybody else did. 2/3 of the class, it was their first day. And some of those that the day before spelled pretty good. So after she just missed the class, she said, now you boys that missed 3 words, you remain. And I said, well, some girls missed 3 words. Well, that's different. So she gave every one of us boys that missed 3 words a whipping. And didn't whip the girls. Some of the girls missed 3 words, she didn't whip them. And that stuck in my craw. A girl was just another person to me then. And then there's a little boy sitting on the front seat that the boys' pockets in those days were just about that deep. You couldn't get anything in them. If you sat down, it'd all drop out. So we'd all went out and got into a plum tree and got a bunch of green plums, and he had his pocket just crammed full of green plums. We'd throw them at one another, you know, stick them on a stick and hit the stick across your hand that way, you know. Hit the other person. You could kind of make it sting a little if you had a good stick. And anyway, he had his pockets full of plum, and they were wiggling around, and seats, just homemade seats, long seats made out of 1x4s, but they were so close together the plum wouldn't run to it. But that plum went rolling down that seat. It sounded like a freight train. Woo, 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 pop, 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 pop. Everything is so still, you know. And she come over there, had her pointer with hold her teeth against her teeth. Who dropped that plum? Didn't ask the kid on the front seat. She asked me and 3 more boys sitting on the second seat. Who dropped that plum? We didn't know. We didn't anybody drop it. And if we'd seen him drop it, we wouldn't have said anything because we was mad at her. And so I said, I don't know. John, who dropped that plum? I don't know. Who dropped that plum? I don't know. Who dropped that plum? I don't know. You 4 boys come up here. And she was whooping. And so I think we got a whipping the next lesson we got. We didn't flunk up any good. And so we got, she didn't hurt. Well, if she'd have cut blood out of us, it would have hurt because we were mad. And anyway, if you sneezed, she gave you a whooping. And we got out and got some smart weed. That's a little weed that grows around the holes of water, you know. They make this fly remedy out of it now. And it has seed finer than moss seed, just almost microscopic. And one little old pod that big will have, well, just be full of seed. And you take those seeds and stuff them up your nose, and you'll sneeze till you sneeze the last one out. So we learned that. We'd stick a seed or 2 up our nose and start sneezing. And then another one slip some up the nose and start sneezing. Then another one back over yonder, slip some of those seed up the nose and start sneezing. She'd whip every one of us. So one day we made it up. Everybody in school except about 4 pets that she had, that we made it up. We was going to, and we'd take everybody take some sneeze weed, and we'd start sneezing. The whole school start sneezing, and so we all started sneezing. And she sent one of her pets out to get some switches. He went out and got load of ironweeds. I don't know whether you know what they are or not, but they grow up about this high, and they have plenty of, don't have any limbs on them, just have leaves, and you can just take them out of and strip the leaves off, and they grow off of a stool, annual or perennial, and they have a crook on the end of the stool like a walking cane. Well, he went out there and got him a whole armful, just like that. She come in, he come in, and she whipped her. She'd give out, and she'd sit down and cry. She done more crying than whipping. She'd have done a lot better. I felt sorry for her when she started crying. And she'd get up and she'd whip some more. She whooped every kid in school, okay. As soon as she went back to the seat, and would all take sneeze-weed again. And that poor girl, she's only about 18 or 19 years old. That poor girl, I know she was given slap out that night, and she was disgusted. So the next day, we had to walk about quarter of a mile over a little hill down through some timber to a flowing well to get water. We'd always go down there after water. And so being my pal, little old runt, I think he was about 8 years old, started down there after water, and one of the, well, there was two people named Devers that had, there was trustees. One of them lived right there close. Well, his kids got out there, and it was Flint Rock Hill, just flint rocks everywhere, just all sides to throw, you know. He got out there and throwing rocks at us. Wasn't gonna let us go get a drink. Well, we got to throwing rocks back at him, and we was both pretty good for kids. We'd make a motion, let them dive, to miss it, then we'd throw. And we'd get them nearly every pop. And we had a couple of them just a-bawling, and one of them was his daddy lived out there, and he went up there just bawling his head off. In fact, there was nothing back down there bawling. Me and that kid, there was 4 of them and 2 of us, but we was keeping them all bawling, and they never did hit us. Anyway, the school, that trustee come running down there, and we got scared, of course, run on down to the well and got us a drink. We went back up to the house, crawled under the floor, got way back up the back. The trustees had come in, and them and the teachers in there talking. Well, we was just hiding from the teacher most of anything. We didn't know anything about that, so we got up on the phone, we could hear them talking. And the trustees was giving her a raking over when she was about it. The trustees took school away from her. And they got an elderly man. I thought he was young. I imagine he was 40 years old, maybe not over 35. Anyway, he came in next day to teach school. He said, well, children, said, I just have one rule. Said, just be good like you are at home and we'll get along fine. And he didn't have any more trouble except one boy, I don't know what started it, but anyway, he started to whip the boy, and the boy got a stick of stove wood. That was in the winter school, and we got on up to the winter school. And he got a stick of stove wood, and the teacher then told him to go home and stay. And he went home and stayed. He come back after a while with a shotgun, sitting around out on the outside. And the next day, why, the kid's daddy was there, and the school teacher whipped the kid. And that was the end of it. We got more trouble.
Mm-hmm. And that was at school at George's Creek?
That was a school in Mitchell Bend, Texas.
Mitchell Bend, Texas.
That's down in the toe. Brazos River makes a bend down there, sort of like Red River does here. And that was down in the middle of the bend down. It was about a mile east to Brazos River, about a mile west of Brazos River. It made a bend away around there.
And what county was that? Is that Johnson County?
No, that was, let's see, what county was that? Somerville County, I guess. Somerville County.
Flu epidemic of 1918.
Who was what?
The flu epidemic, 1918.
Well, I don't know all about that. I was pastor of a little church out here 6 miles southwest of town. And I walked out there on Saturday to see how members were. And, well, we supposed to have service 11 o'clock Saturday morning. Went out there, wasn't nobody there. I went down to the first house. Man and his wife was in bed, sick. Wasn't able to wait on one another. So I called his father that lived here in town, pretty well fixed. He said, well, he'd send somebody out or come out. Went on down to the next house. They was all sick but one. There was one that was able to wait on the rest of the people. Went down to the next house, and a woman trying to get up out of the bed, she couldn't make it. She was so weak. Little girl was standing over there, her nose just bleeding. Her bed was bloody, and her clothes were bloody, and the floor was bloody, and looked like she was going to bleed to death. And the man was in the bed with his wife there. He wasn't able to move, and they didn't have any large children, all small. And I told the woman, I said, go on to bed. I'll wait on the girl. So she told me where I'd find a change of clothes. I went there and got them, and I bathed her face and her hand and got the blood off of them. And I told her, I said, now you've changed your clothes while I take these clothes out to the washroom. And so she changed her clothes. I went back to change her bed. I had her get over on another bed while I went and changed her bed. And got that family pretty well organized. Started down to with the deacons of the church down there, and before I got about 100 yards of the house, he said, have you been in where they've had flu? I said, yes, I have. Well, don't come down here. Don't come down here. So I didn't. I went over to another one of the deacons. I had to go back to the church about a mile and a half over there. I walked down there, and I went over there, knocked on the door, and he said, have you been where they've had flu? I said, yes, I have. Well, don't come in here. Don't come in here. I said, okay. So I come on back to town. I had the flu. My family taken the flu. I doctored myself and the children with fruit juices and aspirin. Went to bed. My wife took it. She'd been sickly all her life. And I called the doctor for her, and she died right down on the other side of the railroad, down 3 houses down there.
How many others died in this area of the flu? How many others died in this area of the flu?
I don't know how many, but they was having from 1 to 6 or 8, 10 funerals at the cemetery every day. And the day my wife was, best I can figure it, there's a week that I never did have my clothes off except when I took a bath. I sat up day and night. And I was manager of a store down here, and I was go down every morning, open up, and turn it over to 3 young people we had working there. Thought they was honest, didn't think about anything else. And the day my wife was buried, the owner of the store came over and came down and said, why didn't you let us know? I said, well, the manager was Fort Worth, his family was sick. And I said, I just don't know. I said, I haven't been able to think very straight. And so the next day after my wife was buried, I went down to the store. They told me, said, you take a week's vacation. I said, the best thing I can do is to work so bad I don't have time to think. So they said, well, I guess you're right. So they said, well, you keep the store here and don't let anybody that's in the store leave until we come back. I didn't know what they had in mind. Well, the manager had asked me, he said, did you sell that black broadcloth suit back there? No. Has it been sold? As far as I know, it hadn't. Did you sell any of those cowboy hats, $25 Stetson hats? I said, no. As far as I know, there hadn't been any sold. And did you sell any of those silk shirts up there? I said, as far as I know, there hadn't been one sold. I have a ticket. Said, we saw a ticket for one. And I said, as far as I know, there's been no more sold. Did you sell any of those expensive ladies' sweaters back there? I said, well, the only ones I sold is, I haven't seen any tickets for any, but I sold a couple, and their ticket on the board back there, ticket in the pack back there, we saw those. But I said, you keep these people here, don't let them out of the house until we get back. They come in drinking with armload of stuff. Those kids had stole everything in the store that was valuable and carried it to their rooms, the idiots. And I guess didn't think about people searching their rooms. And one of the boys, the manager was an old bachelor, and he didn't have any heirs at all, and he was grooming that boy to be his heir. And Of course, he'd never told the boy about it, but he told the manager, and the manager told me that he was grooming him to be his heir. And so that ended their relationship. They all three lost their jobs, and they didn't prefer any legal charges against them. They just lost their job. I told them, said, now you can take the discharge or else we'll file a complaint. It's up to you. So they took the discharge.
What year were you married?
I married the first time in Childress, Texas in 1908. And the second time I married down here southeast of town in 1920. And the third time I married in Gainesville in 1923. And they're all three laying out there in their cemeteries. There's room for me between them. First woman died with the flu, and right down the street there, I was telling you, 1918. And I married again in 20, and she died with dengue fever at 22, and then I married again in 23, and she died with cancer right in there in 1967. I say died of flu, she died with cancer. They said it was cancer, but it wasn't. That's what's on the death certificate. That's what the doctors thought, but she died with tropical fungal.
Yeah.
Because I had a boy in Vietnam, and he had just come home, and she had cancer of the bladder. And her and this daughter here was staying in Dallas, and she was taking x-ray treatments for that. And I was down there, and this boy came in from Vietnam. And of course they embraced. She put her head over his shoulder. He had on his winter uniform. He'd never wore the uniform in Vietnam, of course, and didn't think about being any use to disinfect it. So he didn't disinfect it. And that is very prevalent in Vietnam. The boy told me that was a prevalent disease. More of them that went to the hospital from tropical fungus than any other cause, whatever. Wherever a moist place on your body, that fungus will settle and they lead in, and it gets in their lungs and in their nostrils and what have you. And so she was in that weakened condition, and she, I'm sure, took tropical fungus because the day I had took her back down for a checkup from the cancer, and the doctor said we find no trace of cancer whatever in where it originally was. He said she has gone to her lungs, and the doctor the day I came on back home the next day about 10 o'clock, he called me and said, I'm sending her home. Said, there's nothing anybody can do except just keep her easy. Said, I've treated cancer 37 years. I never saw anything like this in my life. Said, she has tumors in her lungs big as a golf ball. And said her lungs were perfectly normal when she left here 90 days ago. But she never coughed. Well, they just had a little dry hack. She never bled. She never suffered. And it wasn't cancer. She'd have coughed, she'd have bled, and she'd have suffered. And so all she complained of was smothering. And it was tropical fungus, but it was too low. I had diagnosed it myself and figured it out too late to do her any good.
Yeah.
Had it bound to have been what it was. And if the doctor knowed what it was, he'd have called Walter Reed Hospital, and they told him right quick what to do for it. Because they had lots of it.
Yeah. World War One. World War One.
Well, I registered for World War One. I was pastor at Thackerville Church. I weighed 136 pounds nude. We was registered, and we'd been waiting all the morning for the man to come down and register. So when he came, we all lined up, and old boy right behind me looked over my shoulder and said, "You're number 12. I said, "I'll be 13. And he just so dead hissy. He said, "Oh Lord," he come crying and taking on, and said, "I'm going on too short to get killed." I said, "Are you afraid of 13? He said, "I just as soon be shot." I said, "Here, take 12. And I stepped back, give him 12, and I took 13. I said, 13 does mean a bit more to me than 5. And so he went, but he come back, never got a scratch. But it was a pretty trying time. My brother, younger than me, went right at the last of the war. He is married, but they took him on anyway. And he spent I believe 3 years in Germany on the Army of Occupation at Koblenz most of the time. He was an automobile mechanic in the maintenance department of the Army, and they got in hearing distance of the big guns and could see the flashes. They would have been on the front line the next morning or the next day when the Armistice came. And I said, here's you got it. He said, we slept in hog pens, we slept in chicken houses. Said we slept in everywhere. So you get up next morning and have the print of your bed in the mud. Said pick up your sleeping bag, but you leave the print of your bed in the mud. And it's pretty tough, I guess, on about then up towards the front line. And he said, I sure was glad that I missed the sun before we got there.
Yeah.
But they were stationed in one of those big mansions there on the bank of the Rhine in Koblenz. And when the recruits began coming over to relieve them, the kids had never been in the Army, never seen any fighting, and said they was all scared, they were just kids. Those old tile roof, all those buildings have tile roof. He said in the daytime they get hot and they expand, and then when it begins to get cool, said they begin to contract, and said they'll pop just like a rifle. And said when those roofs begin to pop, those kids would run to the windows, begin to shoot. And said we learned that when they started shooting to get down low and keep ourselves away, we said one old boy was just tickled to death. He was leaving for home the next day, and said they kind of quit shooting, and he stuck his head out the window, and somebody shot and killed him. Said he was supposed to come home the next day. Said that was one of the most tragic things you ever seen. Useless, perfectly all uncalled for, because the boys got scared and thought they was being attacked.
Yep. Did you go to the service?
No, I was exempt because for 2 reasons. I was a farmer, then I was a minister. I told them, I said, I won't claim either one of them. They said, we'll do the claiming. I said, you're very important as a producer of food and also as to keep the people's courage built up. And so I had 2 exemptions. And the same way in World War II. I volunteered to go in World War II, but they said no. You're more valuable here than you would be over there.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about the war effort during World War I in this area.
Well, in what respect? What the civilians did?
Yeah.
Well, that was left a whole lot up to the exemption board. Is that what they called them? No. Anyway, the men who said who was going and who wasn't going. Mm-hmm. They were supposed to be the leaders of it. They'd send people out to the schoolhouses to make pep talks about conserving food and buying bonds and what have you. And they sent a man out to Shady Dale, and he just wanted me to do the talking. That's where I was pastor out. I said, you're making a wonderful speech. Just turn him around, face the audience, and the old boy like to faint it. he just couldn't take the center of attraction.
Yeah. What about bond drives?
Well, it got pretty strenuous. If they thought you was able to buy a bond and you didn't, why, they almost mobbed you. And so most everybody that had a loose nickel put it in bonds. But there was one old boy here that had bought a number of bonds, but somebody cheap that he still had some money he hadn't put in bonds, which he did have. He bought cattle and hogs, and he was trying to keep a little operating capital, you see, which would make him one of the most valuable men in the community, because most of the farmers couldn't take their cattle to market anywhere. They'd have to sell them to what we call scalpers. But anyway, they got after him, and he got kind of rangy with them, and they gave him some misery. I think they put him in jail a while. He finally bought some more bonds and finally let him out. But the mob hysteria was very easily stirred up. If they thought a man was a slacker, or if he got out, if you had it in for a man, all you had to do to get real, give him some real trouble, just report that he was a slacker. You know, I had, when I bought this place down here, I bought it in the fall of '16. Dad and me went to gin one day, and the man at the gin there at Gainesville got after to sell us 320 acres across over here. And we'd already rented, and so we told him we couldn't buy, we'd already rented. Well, I said, I'll sell it to him. This is already rented, sell it to you. Let you stay where you're at, they can stay where they're at. So Dad had a big old yellow horse he had traded for, he didn't really have any use for. And an old man gave him $150 for that horse as down payment on 200 acres at $20 an acre. And so we, that fall, we bought some wheat. We come up here, going to sow some wheat. We had some tight land, but the ground was so hard we couldn't break it. And we didn't get any moisture and didn't get to sow it. So we had the wheat, we were going to keep it to sow it the next fall. You know, somebody cheap that we had that wheat, and they come out there and made us take that wheat to Gainesville. Couldn't sell it here, we had to take it to Gainesville, the milling, the flour mill, to sell it. And we didn't get sold the wheat next year. So Dad and me always bought our flour in the fall. It was cheaper than any other time. We'd buy enough to last us a year. Well, we bought our flour, and for fear that somebody would cheap it, we put the flour up in the attic of the house. I went up in my attic and took some wire and fastened them to the two bars of the rails, and then come down here and put some plank across here and made a little swinging rack where the rats couldn't get in. She put my flour on that, and we had flour all from old. We was eating that wheat too, and that was a saved flour.
Yeah.
But somebody that thought they were smart cheaped it. We had some wheat, and I come up and explained to them, well, we can't have it. Said, we went out and needed it next year. Said, we need that flour now. So it made us take out 18 bushel of wheat from down to Gainesville. It took me a day to go down there and a day to come back. Had to go in a wagon.
What about Armistice Day?
Well, I was right down yonder when Armistice Day come, and an old preacher from out the west end of the county, I'd got to be pastor of a church out there, and he was on the jury, so he come home with me Sunday night, and was sleeping there in the west room, the north room, and wife was sick with the flu then, and so along in the night, firing broke out. And I woke up, I was dazed, about half dazed. I said, what in the world is all this shooting going? Wife said, oh, it's Armistice Day. I said, what in the world is Armistice Day? I couldn't think. And she told me. So about that time, I guess it was a stray bullet going over and over and over, hit a window. The window in the house room where the old preacher was sleeping was just two windows to the sash. And they had taken an old Model T windshield and made windows out of them. And that old glass, you know, when it gets old, anything hits it, just break all to pieces, breaking 1,000 pieces. So I guess a stray bullet going around and around, over and over and over, must have hit that about the middle. It just scattered that glass all over the room. I scared that old preacher to death. He jumped up, come running in our room in his undershirt, and said, they're breaking in on us. I said, oh, it's stray bullet hit that glass, I'm sure. And I thought it might be somebody threw the brick through it, but I got out and went around the house, wasn't anybody there. But they were shooting downtown, they just were shooting in every direction. And I just figured it was a straight rifle bullet or pistol bullet going over and over, and did come through, it just hit it, just knocked it all out. And we come down the next day, I was working at the store down there then, and we come down there the next day, and they was running up and down that street, and they had an old car, an old Oldsmobile with a top let back. You know, they used to make them like a buggy, which was at the top back. And they had the top let back, and it was two men sitting down in the seat, two men over in the front seat, and two men sitting up on the back. And all had guns, pump guns. They was going down, bang, 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 bang. Get it down and load it again, bang, 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 bang. They shot every shell there was in Marietta of any description. They shot all the insulation off of the electric wires down there and shot some of the wires in too. And the manager came into the store. He said, well, I said, well, you going to keep open? He said, well, said, I don't know. You don't guess there's any use. Said, everybody's so bad excited. Said, besides, said, the way they're shooting around here, everybody might get killed. Said, I guess about the best thing we can do is go home and go to bed. So I went home. He did too, I guess. But they shot till they shot all the shells in Marietta up. And the ones that doing the biggest shooting was the slackers that played sick. One old my brother got on the exemption board, and big rancher out here had two boys, and he filed exemption for both of them, and said that one of them wasn't able to go, and the other, there was one of them he had to have on the place there to keep the place going, and the other, he said, was mentally retarded. And he swore that that boy was mentally retarded, making grade A in school. And the old boy's running the ranch down there now. He has been on the public officials of the state, appointed officers for the various regencies like the home administration leases or whatever the state can appoint him. He's had some kind of a state office nearly ever since. Wasn't no more retired than nothing. So brother said, well, said, if you're going to exempt those that you want to exempt and make those go that you don't like, said, you can just take my resignation. Said, if I'm on this board, said, they're going to go and go alike regardless. And said, you just take my name off the exemption board.
Well, what else can we talk about? Can you tell me exactly how a cotton gin works?
A cotton gin work?
Yeah.
You never been to a cotton gin?
No, sir.
Is that right? Well, I've been in quite a few. You drove across the scales, usually a farmer with what we call good cotton, 1,500 pound would make a 500 pound bale of picked cotton. And you drive on the scales, they'd weigh you, and you drove off, and you drove up under what they call a suction, a big pipe. And they had a big fan up in there. They're powering that pipe, and they'd suck that cotton out of the gin. You carry it up there and put it in the gin stand overflow, and there was a belt up there to keep that cotton even on all the gins. Well, they'd come down the gins here, and there was about 30 saws on this side and 30 saws on that side and 30 more down here, and this cotton would fall down between those saws, and the saws had teeth that were concave. In other words, they were soaping. And when the saw hit that lint, it'd jerk it off, and they'd take it back, and the fan then would suck it off those teeth and suck it into a roll, and it'd go on down, and it'd hit another conveyor, and it'd carry it up yonder. It'd come down in the what they call a press. It's a great big white sheet of that cotton. Go down the press, and there was a man standing there with the press with a stick. He'd stick it down to push it down. He had a big cloth over his eyes and nose, had goggles on his eyes, and had a big cloth over his nose because it hailed like that. Lint was just there, was just full of lint, you know. And then every now and then he had a lever up here. He'd press, and a great big block just fit that hole they call the press. Would come down and push that cotton down, and he'd keep pushing it down till he got it all in. After a while, the man at the gin would say, "All out." That means that was all that cotton was out. Well, after a bit, the cotton would quit coming in because they'd quit running it down yonder. They'd raise those gins up to where they would be out of gear, those saws up to where they'd be out of gear, and they'd wait just a few minutes. Then they'd start the other bale in. They always kept some of that bale up there, the last bale, to get this saw started on, you know. And so and that was where you got your sample. You got your sample over the bale before you, which wasn't quite fair, but anyway, that's the way it worked. Anyway, when they said all out, this man at the gin would bring this thing down, as far as it'd go, and then he'd press another lever, and there'd be a big screw down there, bring that bottom of that press up. And he'd have a bagging sticking to this top piece up here. He'd stick a piece of bagging to the top piece. He put a piece on this bottom piece before he started running the cotton in. And so he'd have a piece up here, and when that come down, and the other piece come up, it got up to a certain place, why, they'd stop it. Then he'd run what they call a tie, a little flat piece of iron about that wide, and they'd run that through, and it had a half boot, it had a piece here with a notch in it, and a notch there. Come down here, it had a hole here, just a notch, and it had a place down here. And this tie would fit around that square, you see.
Yeah.
And they just bend it with the flap on the underside. And when they did that, they got 6 ties to the bale, I believe. And when they did that, they'd roll that bale out, put your initials on it, put a number on it, the consecutive number. They'd start in the first year, number 1, and they'd put the consecutive number on it, and that bale went on the books as your cotton. And the seed would, if you sold them the seed, they'd blow them out into a warehouse over yonder. They'd drop down below the gin saws into a press, and the air would catch them there and take them out and blow them out in their warehouse. But if you wanted the seed, they'd come up here and come over into a box here that had a place at the bottom. You could just open it up, and they'd drop out in your wagon. And if you sold the seed, they'd just figure so many pound of seed to so many pound of gent's cotton. And usually they figured on the short side, and they got more seed than they paid for. That's the way it usually worked.
Now, where is the seed taken out of the cotton?
Beg pardon?
Where in the process is the seed taken out of the cotton?
When these saws take the lint off the seed.
Okay, the saws take it off.
The saws take it off the seed.
Okay.
And then they'll take this seed. There's usually a little bit of lint on each seed, but then when they take these seed to the oil mill, they run them through some more saws, and those saws are closer together, and they skin that seed until it's slick and black. Then they grind it and make cottonseed meal out of it, and they just crush it and run it through a place that shakes the kernels out and leaves the hull. And then they take the hull and they sell them cottonseed hulls. And cottonseed hulls don't have any nutrition at all about them except what little meal that might be clinging to them. But they're a filler. And so they'll take them then, and cottonseed hulls, the cowmen will take them and sprinkle a little cottonseed meal on them, and they'll feed them to cow, because the cow's got to have so much filler regardless. And they feed the hulls back to the cows that way. And they take the meal then, and they make peanut butter out of the meal. They used to make lots of peanut butter out of cottonseed meal. And if they mix it as much as half and half, you can't hardly tell it. But if you mix it more than half and half, you can tell it. The cottonseed meal leaves a bitter taste in your mouth after you eat the meal. And if you eat much of it, it's hard on your eyes. And it's also hard on a lot of people's constitution. They used to sell peanut butter very cheap, but you could see little pieces of cottonseed hulls in it. You know, it's at least half cottonseed meal. But then they would cut just take a knife, cut that bag, and reach in there and pull out a big wad of that cotton, about 1 pound, 2 pounds. And that's your sample. They'll tie a little string around that and give it to you, and you can take it downtown and show it to the buyer, but he'll go and cut it in another place and pull out another sample. He'll keep both samples if he buys the cotton. And that way he makes that much extra profit. He sells a bale at the recorded weight, but he's got at least 2 or 3 pounds of cotton out of every bale. And after a while, he'll gather all that up and send it up gin, have it baled, and he'll sell about a bale of cotton. Graft and everything.
That's true.
And they'll pull the cotton this way until all the lint is the same length. They'll measure that lint, 15/16. Well, that's fairly good. If it's a 1/2 inch, well, that's a little short lint, half and half. I give you 10 cents for that. The cotton's worth 15 cents a pound. I give you 10 cents for that. and you've got to sell it about 1.5 cents, 2 cents under what lint, 15/16 lint would bring. And 1 inch lint, that's long staple. And it should bring you a fancy price. And then when you get 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, that is long staple. And that brings you a fancy price because they make the better grades of cloth out of that long staple. And over in New Mexico, they irrigate and raise nothing but long staple. And that long staple puts the bolls right square together. The bolls will be touching one another. This other cotton is, frankly, there's a lot of differences in length of bolls, but they put that and they'll make, if they don't make at least 1.5 bales, they've had a failure. Make maybe 3.5 bales to the acre, and that cotton will be up maybe as high as this ceiling, and this boll just to stick all over the stalk.
What kind of cotton makes the best? What brand? Is there a certain name?
Oh, no, not now. There used to be Rowland's cotton was a good dry land long staple cotton, and then they developed half and half, which 1,000 pound of good half and half would make a 500-pound bale. That's the reason it's called half and half. But it was short staple, but it produced more per acre than the Rowland cotton did. So it was it took the country pretty well by storm, and they got to where that's about all the rage. Now they have a special breed of cotton that all ripens at the same time, and when cotton gets just about ripe now, they spray it with a defoliator that takes all the leaves off, makes it look just like frosted here. Then they run the cotton picker over it, and they pick it by machinery. There's no cotton picked by hand anymore. They'll pick it with machinery, and they'll get the bolls. Some of them get the bolls and all. That's pullers, but they've got one that picks the cotton. It's got a bunch of spindles that go around, and they're so thick they'll hit every burr, and they spin that cotton, and the teeth on it are all one way, just like cat's claw. And when it hits a bowl of cotton, it'll just twist up and get all the cotton out. Then the spindles go back on a chain, and they go back through, and the air jerks the cotton off the needles, and they go back and get some more.
Yeah.
And that's the way they pick the cotton. But now the pullers, they just have like this. We used
kind
to,
of like a claw.
yeah, we used to take an old seed fork and put it down in the bottom of a sled and make a puller for it. If cotton wasn't over that high, that worked pretty good. And we'd stand up here in the thing with a pitchfork, and we'd rake the cotton back. As the puller pulled it off, we'd rake it back in, and you could pull 8 or 10 bales a day. One man was a puller, if his cotton was real good. And they just usually pull it out to the end, just take the back end of the puller out and take the pitchfork, rake it out on the ground, and then they'd come along later with another pitchfork and a seed fork and throw it up in a wagon, take it to gin.
Well, let me see. Whenever you were picking cotton by hand, how much could you pick in a day?
Well, the most I ever picked was 202.5 days, and 303 in one day is the most I ever picked.
Yeah.
But the first year I was married, I had a good cotton crop, and I had a little old. Let her start in with 1 sack, and he'd take 1 sack down the road piece, about where he thought it'd take her to get 50 pounds, and he'd drop that sack, and then he'd pull them down where he thought it'd take another 50 pounds, and drop that sack. Then he'd start picking, and when she dropped the second sack, why then he'd go take his cotton and weigh it, then he'd take hers, go get hers and weigh it, then take her sacks back and drop them. So he only got about 500 or 600 pounds a day, but she'd get anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 pounds every day. The two together picked a bale a day.
That's a lot of cotton.
That's a lot of cotton. I'll tell you, if you never pick cotton, you don't know how much cotton it is.
It's true. Do people chop cotton anymore?
No. They plant cotton now about like they were at the stand. They don't hoe cotton anymore. They use herbicides.
Why? How do you chop cotton? How did you chop?
With a hoe, and the hoe is usually was 10 to 12 inches wide. I've got one laying right out there, and you just take it this way and chop the cotton out. If the cotton was clean, I could chop 5 acres a day. In fact, when the last year my oldest brother farmed at home, he'd dirt up behind me, and we'd walk. I went as far as he did with the plow. I'd chop every row he plowed in a day, but he had a slow team. About 5 or 6 acres a day. I'd get 5 or 6 acres a day. I could chop it about as fast as I could walk. But now they plant it, and then they never thin it anymore. They plant it thinner. They plant the delinted seed, and that is the seed that's had all the lint chopped off of them. They plant those now, and they plant them with instead of planting with what we call a cotton planter, with a little wheel that had a prong on the end of it, come along and knock the seed out. They plant it now with a plate with a hole in it, just like cotton, just like corn.
Yeah.
And plant with a plate and a hole in it. And they plant it just exactly what they want. And the seed has been thoroughly tested, and about 100% germination, so they know what they're planting. And most of them, big lot of it raise cotton now, irrigate, and they know just where they're at. There's not near as much gambling in cotton raising as there used to be.
Now cotton is pretty hard on the land, isn't it?
Well, not necessarily so. Any crop is hard on the land if you cultivate it clean, but most of the cotton that's raised now is raised under irrigation. The government has stipulated that each farm have so much cotton acreage. Well, those men out on the prairie in the west have come down in here and they've bought the cotton acreage. The cotton acreage is transferable, and or used to be, I guess it still is. And they have bought practically all the cotton acreage from this part of the country because the boll weevils are so bad down here, and the people just down here just about quit raising cotton. Used to be 6 gins in this town. There isn't a gin in Love County. There is one in the west end of Love County. There isn't a gin in Cook County. There isn't a gin in Carter County. There's just very few gins anymore. And so it's got to where they don't raise any cotton in this part of the country. And most of them have sold their acreage to those people out on the prairie out yonder, out in West Texas, western Oklahoma. They have that good, smooth, level land, and one man can cultivate 300 or 400 acres, 5, 6, and they don't chop it anymore because they use herbicides to keep the weeds out, and so they gather it with the pickers and the pullers. Most of them out there use the pullers, I think. They use the pickers mostly in Louisiana and Tennessee and back down in there. They used to in the Mississippi bottom there, the cotton would be high as this house, and they'd have it roll 6 feet apart, and maybe 3 feet apart in a row, and then it would lap in the middle all over. And so much foliage, the boll weevils eat it up. Now they bred up a cotton that doesn't get about that high.
About 2-3 feet high?
About 2 feet high, about as high as you ever seen it down there. And they spray that cotton continually. And they was spraying it down there on one side of the field and picking it on the other. When I was down there, we come through there. And there'd be a field that they'd already defoliated. It was black, you know, and then here was another that the foliage had dropped off, and they was running a picker on it. Right across the fence road there was a field that still had some green bolls on it, and they'd be spraying it. Have those airplanes running right here low down, spraying that cotton. It's all mechanical now.
Yeah. Okay.
You ever build a sod house?
No, I never did build one. I built rock houses. I built a rock room under my home in Colorado. They don't hew the rock there. They take and make a double wall. They put the smooth side out here and the smooth side out there, 2 layers, and they have the rough right inside, and then you fill that down in there with dirt, preferably mud, and pack it in good and tight. And you put mud in between the rocks, and you've got a smooth wall on each side, and your walls are about 2 foot wide, 2 foot thick. Then I covered this with, I went up on the mountains, and I got a long cedar log and split it in half, and put 2 what we call ridge poles up on top. Then I took other split cedar and laid them, we had three layers of cedar, Had one across the top that was smooth, and then I had one that's sloping, one that's sloping. I covered that with pea vine or bean vines, then covered that with dirt.
Ever hear of Billy Washington?
Who?
Billy Washington.
Billy Washington, locally here? Yes, I've heard a lot of Billy Washington. I wired his house, the first electricity was ever put in his old fort. His old fort lived out in southeast of town.
What have you heard about him?
Well, I've heard a lot about him. He was like all pioneer ranchmen. He was kind of a outlaw within himself. He had a boy that the old man had been losing some cattle. He went down one day where some people holding a fence where some cattle had been driven away, and he found his son's lariat with his son's name on it. He says, "Huh." He says, "So he's following the footsteps of his old daddy." That place is a fort. The foundation is of brick, and it's up about that high. Foundation is
About 4 feet.
Yeah, about 5. You can't hardly straighten up under it. I can't, and it's got loopholes every little bit under it. It's got little places about that big around, all underneath. It's a regular fort.
Huh. He built that in the 1880s.
He built it summers long then.
Yeah.
Now there was another Washington that built a place right back up here. His house burned. He had a palatial mansion there, and he had his cow lot looked like an old wagon yard used to be. Just a big lot here and with sheds all the way around it. But his house burned when I lived up. I used to own a farm right up there, right this side of it. And his house burned while I was there. And they built us just a small house back since then. But he had a well, the windmill there that I don't suppose ever goes
Was that
right.
Jerry Washington? Was that Jerry
Yeah, I
Washington?
believe it was.
Ever hear of Fred Waite?
Who?
Fred Waite.
Fred Waite? I don't believe it is.
Yeah, he was Secretary of the Chickasaw Nation. Was Billy Washington as bad as they say he was?
Well, I expect he was worse than the common story went about him. He was kind of barren, you know what I mean. He kind of ruled the ranch where he went, and he didn't like any interference, and everybody was afraid of him. So I've heard. See, I witnessed the deed when they sold the place to Brennan's, and back under, in the 30s sometime, 20s sometime, I guess it was. They sold it and come down there one Saturday evening. I was on the No Republican town. They came down to my place and I witnessed the deed when they sold it to, his heirs sold it to Brandon's folks. And then later, they called me down there to wire it. I used to do lots of electrical wiring, and I wired it. And I had a wedding down there when this people that lost it to the loan company here a while back, Bratch, big beer outfit, or Pabst, was it Pabst?
Schwab?
Huh?
Schwab?
Yeah, Schwab's owned it then, and I had a wedding. I married one of the boys. Had a big wedding there. They have added a lot. They've added a lot of chandeliers. They were right where I had an ordinary light, but they added a lot of chandeliers and had it beautiful, always fixed up beautifully.
Well, I think that's about all, I guess. Oh, when did you decide to go into the ministry?
Well, when I really surrendered was in 1914, I guess. I was licensed in 1914. I was trying to keep from going to ministry ever since I was about 12, 13 years old. My daddy was a preacher, and I was the oldest boy at home. I was 12, and he left to go in a meeting and told me, he said, "Now, son," said, "I want you to keep these younger children's word." He told me all he wanted to do. So He's gone a couple of weeks, and we run out of some of the food that we're supposed to, that we enjoyed. For instance, we run out of meat, and we run out of sugar, and we run out of flour. Of course, we had plenty of cornbread and milk and butter and beans and peas. We raised those. But Mother said, "Now, children, that's all right." Said, "Daddy will be home Saturday or Monday," and said they'll take up a good collection. Said he'll have plenty of money, and he'll go to the grocery store and get all of those things. Well, when Paul come in, they took up a collection and got $1.60. And somebody gave him a slab of home-cured bacon about that long and about that wide and about that thick. And it was yellow. It was so old and rancid, it was plumb yellow, and it was bitter when you went to eat it. And I went out behind the smokehouse and cried. I was so badly disappointed. And I swore right then I'd never be a preacher. But anyway, I finally surrendered and was ordained in 1917 right down here at Thackerville. They offered me, I had a friend, a school teacher that was pretty well fixed. He told me, he said, "I'll pay your way through the cemetery, through the seminary, through the seminary, if you'll go to the seminary." And said, "You pay me back if you ever get able. If you don't, it's all right." Said, "I've got some tithe money anyway." And said, "I don't know of any place I'd rather spend it." I said, "Well, why should I go to the seminary?" I said, "Would it make me a better preacher?" "Well," he said, "I'll have to acknowledge that the way I see it, you preach better than any of the seminary boys now." I said, "Well, what you think advantages be?" "Well, it'll help you to get a better church." I said, "Who calls a man to preach?" "Well," he said, "God does." I said, "Who tells a man where he wants him to work?" "Well, God does." I said, "Well, God called me to country churches. And if I went and got a seminary education, I'd have to first go to college. That's 4 years. I'd have to go to the seminary. That's 4 years. That'd be 8 years. I'd be off of the farm. And time me and my family spent 8 years in town. Do you think we'd be satisfied in the country?" "Well," I said, "I don't imagine you would." I said, "No, none of these other seminary boys are." And I said, "No," I said, "God called me to the country churches. I'm not going to go to seminary because I'd be tempted to leave the country churches. And I'm not going." So I spent my entire lifetime right here in the country churches. And there's been, out of my ministry though, there has been some very notable men. One man that's been all over the world. He was associate evangelist for the Southern Baptist Convention for years, and he made arrangements for preachers to go from here and hold meetings in South America, all over South America. He made arrangements for them to go from here and hold meetings in Australia and in New Zealand. He made arrangements for them to go to hold meetings in Japan and in the Holy Land and all those places. And he's holding a meeting himself in Washington, D.C., a block from the Capitol. And he had the flu. He'd get up out of his hotel bed and go and preach and go back and go to bed. And he wasn't having any results. And said he told the Lord, said, "Lord, if you're through with me as an evangelist, says, don't let me have any success." But said, "If you want me to continue in evangelistic work, let this thing break loose." And that night he had 99 conversions.
Well, that's good.
And said that they wanted him to hold another meeting just 3 or 4 blocks from there, and he told them, said, "Just come in right straight." He said, "No, I've got to get back to Dallas, and I've got some business down there I've got to tend to." He said, "It'll take me 3 or 4 days." Well, I said, "Tell you what we'll do. We'll pay you away to Dallas and back. If you go down there and tend to your business and come on back, we'll give you a week to do it." And said he boarded a plane and said they was going to have to stop in Birmingham and a lot of other places. And said they come in and paged him and 2 other men and said, "We want to see you in the office." So he went in there and said, "We've oversold this flight." He said, "If we've got another flight that's flying directly from here to Dallas, non-stop." He said, "If you men will take passage on that flight and surrender your seats on this flight that we have, that's a local flight," he said, it was a higher price flight, but said, "We'll give you an equal ticket." And so he took it. said they started out and went down through Mississippi, and said the report was there was a cyclone cloud coming from the south and one coming from the northwest, and said they were going to meet down there, and said when they meet, said things going to happen. And said they told this pilot, said you can make it if you just watch, said we can't give you a route, said you'll just have to watch the clouds and fly along between them. So he said they was going along there and said you could look up that way, and said there'd be thunderhead just as high as you could see, and look over that way from the other side of the plane, look up that way, and said there'd be thunderhead just as high as you could see. And said there we was sailing along between them, and when they met, said that they'd blow after the airplane, come out of the sky. And said he just thought about how wonderful the Lord was to take care of things, and said me, little old cotton picking me, up here taking part with an engagement back in Washington, D.C., and said he went down and tended to his business, went back up there and had another big revival up there.
Well, Mr. Rowland, I think we have a good interview.
I didn't tell you my introduction to Oklahoma.
No, tell me about that.
Well, I moved into the Thackerville community and went up to Thackerville to buy the kids some Christmas, Thanksgiving Day. And there was a family moved in there to pick cotton. And there was an old man by the name of Howard, well, I think of his name directly. Anyway, he come up there and he was drinking. And he said, let's run them fellas out of town. Let's run them fellas out of town. So he got a bunch of those Thackerville boys, and they undertaken to run these other men out of town. Well, they had a free-for-all street fight. I don't know if you ever saw one or not. That beating thing I ever saw. All down the street, people just are fighting, fist fighting, and getting one another down. And I was up here at the store, and they got this old boy down right in front of me, and there's three men had him down, and one of them had his knife out, and he'd reach over to catch his head with his right hand to hold his head, no, his left hand, to hold his head back, cut his head off, and he'd make a lick with his knife, and that old boy would throw his chin right down against his shoulder and throw his shoulder up, and he had his coat on, and he'd rip the coat, and his coat was packed with cotton, and he couldn't cut through that cotton. He made three strokes. He made 3 strokes slicing that shirt, that coat of cotton. No man by the name of I thought his name. Anyway, Barnard Michael. He's standing there with his hands in his pocket whistling, just looking all around. He happened to look down. These kids had just run up there and got this boy down, and run up there just a little piece in front of him. He looked down, saw what they was doing, so he just went over behind this old boy, reached over and got a hold of his knife hand, raised him up just like he was a little kid, twisted that hand back, got that knife out, closed it up, and throwed it over this store. And when he did, this old boy jumped up and hit him. He just knocked that boy winding. Another run up hit him. He just knocked him winding. Another run up hit him. He just knocked him winding. And then they all got up and lit out after this boy that they'd let up when they got up to jump on him. And one of them picked up a brick. Walter Langston picked up a brick. The man right over yonder in a wagon with a shotgun hollered at him, said, "Don't you throw that brick." Well, we run through, there's 4 or 5 of us, we run through the store out the back end. This boy run up the alley beside the store, and we run through to keep up with the fight. And just as we got through on the other side, we saw that gun come down, and we all dropped down behind some oil barrels laying there. Those old blue whistlers hit all around those oil barrels. Hit this old boy right here in the flank, and he was out about firm near the street, I guess, from us, right between us and the gun. And he fell, and they went up there. He throwed the brick. Just as he throwed the brick, this fellow shot him. And he didn't hit the boy that he throwed it at, but anyway, that was the uncle to the boy that he threw the brick at that was doing the shooting. They was in there to pick cotton. Well, they all ran up there and picked the old boy up. Might not have died if they hadn't picked him up by the legs and the arms and drug him off down to the doctor's office. But anyway, they did. Doctor's office just down the south side of the street. And he died in a few minutes. And then the boys all said, "Okay, we're going to go home and get our guns," and said, "We're going to clean this bunch up." So the couple of men that had been marshals, I don't know whether either one of them was at the time or not, but anyway, they went out and arrested this man, took his gun away from him, and started along. They wouldn't arm him up, didn't handcuff him or anything. He just followed them along. These boys run up and started jumping onto him, and he just knocked them down as they come to him. And he knocked about the third one down, and he turned to these men and said, "Now listen, I'm your prisoner. You either protect me or give me that gun." Said, "If you give me that gun, I don't ask anybody to protect me." But said, "If you're going to count me as your prisoner, you've got to protect me." So they went back, got him in between them, and the boys all run home to get their guns. Says, "We'll kill the whole business." And so these men that had him took him out across there and hid him in an old outdoor toilet until somebody could go get an automobile, and they brought him down and put him in his lockup. By that time, those boys come back with their guns, but they couldn't find anybody to shoot, so they went home.
When was that? What year?
That was in 1916.
Now what caused all that?
Oh, guess that old boy was, you know how local people get, they will run all strangers out.
Yeah.
Well, that's just the way it started. This old man was drinking. When he was sober, he was a nice fellow, but when he was drinking, he won't fight. And he, Deadburn, we're gonna run them out of town. They can't come in this town. And so we got these local boys stirred up, and they was gonna run the others out of town. The other didn't run good.
What was the old man's name that started it?
Old man, Howard, Morgan.
Howard Morgan.
Howard Morgan.
What was the name of the boy that was killed?
Walter Langston's the boy that got killed. He has some cousins. Has one cousin lives here in town now.
And what was the guy's name that shot him?
I can't think of it. I have lost it in my memory for a number of years. I can't think of it. I never did know him personally, but of course I knew it. I think he's in penitentiary for 3 years.
Oh, he did go to the penitentiary then.
Yeah, he went to penitentiary for 3 years.
Well,
I was down there holding a meeting after that, and I had a man help me in a meeting. And another man got killed down there, and he said, "Well, we just as well dismiss the meeting." I said, "Why?" Well, I said, "There won't be anybody at church tonight." Oh, I said, "You'll have the biggest crowd we've ever had." He said, "After all of this?" I said, "Yeah, after all of this." I said, "People at Thackerville don't get too bad excited when somebody gets killed. They're kind of used to it." And so sure enough, we had the biggest crowd that night we'd had it all.
Sounded like Thackerville was a rough town.
Thackerville used to be a rough place. They wouldn't allow a nigger to stop there at all.
What about the KKK around Thackerville?
It got to be very prominent here one time. There was a man in town that I thought needed to be whipped and run out of town, so I joined. Come find out he was Grand Dragon. That's a fact. And so there was another organization which started in as a farm labor union, but it really turned out to be anti-Ku Klux. And there's a burning crosses all around over the country here. There was one man that was going around telling the Ku Klux that they need to burn the cross up on that schoolhouse ground. Now we've got to do it. We just got to burn that cross. We want to show these people that we're still here. And I got to watch him. He'd talk to the Ku Klux men, and he'd go and talk to the anti-Ku Klux. And so I got to follow him, unnoticed by him. And he was agging the anti-Ku Klux, let's go up there and tear that cross down. If anybody interferes with us, let's kill them. I reckon he had it in mind. He wanted to get somebody killed. I don't know whether any one particular person, just wanted to see some bloodshed. But anyway, I went to one of the Ku Klux that were all my good friends, and I had been a Ku Klux, but I had taken out and was running for office on the anti-Ku Klux Klan ticket. Started in as our farm labor union, but turned into anti-Ku Klux. And I went to one of the Ku Klux, my friend. I said, "Listen," I said, "why run the danger of bloodshed?" I said, "You've got a cross down under on the water tower. Why do you have to have one up at the schoolhouse?" And he said, "Well, I've been wondering about that myself." And I told him about this fella, his brother-in-law, running from one side to the other. And I said, "Why don't you get around here and get all this stopped before somebody get hurt?" So they did, and there was never anything done about it. They didn't burn the cross up there, and there was nothing done. But that man was playing both sides. He belonged to both of them. And he was playing both sides, trying to get some trouble stirred up.
Was he a local man?
Huh?
Was he a local man?
Yeah, he was a local man in business down there.
What about the, let me see, what about the bootleggers around here?
They wore badges to keep from trying to sell to one another. No, we had a sheriff that was supposed to be very staunch prohibitionist and enforce the prohibition law, and he had a first deputy that was a bootlegger. Consequently, when they go out to raid a still, they already knew about it, and there's nothing there. Now, I don't know whether the sheriff knew about his deputy or not, but I don't see how he kept from it.
What was your sheriff's name?
The sheriff's name was Smith, and the bootlegger's name was Perry. I wired the bootlegger's house after that, and he's a good friend of mine, lived next door neighbor to me. And he had a bunch of chickens that was eating my garden up, and I asked him, I said, Dave, are these your chickens? No, I don't know whose chickens are. I said, well, they go over to your house, Bruce? No, they don't. I said, I don't know whose chickens are. So I was selling sewing machine. I went out in the country, and I traded me an old chicken-eating sow. I asked a friend of mine, I said, where can I get a chicken-eating sow? I want her guaranteed to catch chickens. Well, he said, I've got one. I'll swap it for his first payment on a sewing machine. I said, let's get them done. So I loaded her up and brought her in, turned her in my cow out there after night one night. And next morning, this boy came out just back at it between us. He was whistling to milk his cow. And directly here come that bunch of pretty Rhode Island red hens. Oh, they was pretty. Come running out. I had thrown some corn down to the old sow to eat while I milked. And so she was eating corn, and these old hens come running out. I hollered at him just before they got to the pen. I said, Dave, yeah, you know, are these your hens? No, I don't know whose they are, preacher. They're not mine. And about that time, one of them reached over to get a grain of corn. That old sow got her head. And he snapped her head off and started eating her. And I said, well, I just wanted to know. I said, I've got a chicken-eating sow here, and she's already got one of them, and says she'll eat the whole bunch before she gets through. Oh, my Lord God Almighty, he said, and over that fence he'd come and jumped down and run and scared the chickens all back in. And he had a little old place right at the bottom. I know he had a plank over there. He just dropped down in it. So I watched him break that pole plank come down in that hole, just fit it. And he'd been opened up, letting them come out there and eat my garden up, eat around over the place there. But I never had another chicken on the place. I got rid of them. But we had one sheriff here that I met him one day, and he said, preacher, he said, do you know of any stills around over the country? I looked at him, I said, what do you want to know that for? Well, I said, she violations of law to run a still. I said, you think it is? Yeah, it's a violation of the law. I said, why do you have an interest in all of them then? I said, you know where all of them are. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, you own an interest in every one of them. I said, how many do you know there is? I said, well, you've got one. I told him 3 or 4 different locations where there was stills at. He said, well, I said, you don't know all of them yet. I've got 2 more. But his son, working at a still down here south of town, stole a tag off my car. I lived in right across the street, right just angling from the jail, and I had my car parked there. He stole the tag off my car. I saw it on his little jail bill. Saw my tag on his jail bill. What's the use complaining? Like my son, I bought a man out west of town here to give my son a job. I bought his farming outfit, and his son went out there. Come in a few days, said, Dad, what am I going to do? I said, why? What do you mean? Well, he said, those bootleggers out there I've got whiskey all over my place. Said, I moved a bale of hay yesterday and found 2 gallons of whiskey down between my bales of hay. I said, well, I said, whose are they? He said, the next door neighbors. I said, go down there and tell him, just walk in, tell him, Mr. So-and-so, I'm farming, you're peddling whiskey. You tend to your business and I tend to mine, but let me tell you, the next whiskey I find on my place, I'm breaking it. Now, just tell him, no, I mean that. I'm going to break every gallon I find on my place, but I'm just going to give you warning. He said, Mr. Roland, there won't be any more whiskey on your place as long as you stay here, and there wasn't. They got along fine.
Yeah, well, that's good.
But the sheriff don't know why I didn't report the steal. I told him, I said, report it to who? I said, you know, you're getting a revenue all the way from one of them. And
Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't know of anything.
Well, Mr. Rowland, I've enjoyed this.
There used to be lots of shenanigans going on here in the oil business. I was notary public, and they came and got me, a couple of local men did, to go out and acknowledge some leases. They're going to buy some oil leases. They were drilling the first well over here north of Enville then. They had drilled several wells out in there, but they had never really hit oil, but they never did bring any in. There's one well that had been running wild gas over there just by heads. It'd strike a match, they said it'd run up about 10, 12 feet high and burn about 3 minutes and go out. Then wait a minute, you would hear it coming again, strike another match and run out. But anyway, they was drilling this well, and these men, they had already got the acreage blocked. You know, they'd go around and they'd get so much acreage for $1 an acre. No, you give to them. You get so much acres, give to them. And if they struck oil, of course, why, if you drilled on your place, you'd get the royalty out of it. And these men had, I think they had $5,000 they was going to put in out there buying leases at $1 an acre. Well, they went out there, and they was telling about the company decided they didn't have enough acreage, and they'd have to have some more acreage. They wasn't going to drill the well, but they was going to pay $1 an acre for the acreage they bought from here on. And big lot of story, and the man turned to me and said, Mr. Roland, said, I've heard of you. I don't know you, but I've heard of you. Said, is he telling me the truth? I said, no. Right, the man sitting there. I said, no, as a matter of fact, I said, the oil company's got all the acreage they want. These men have got a little extra money they owe to slough off, and they're buying up a few acres, buying up a few leases around here, hoping that it'll go up. I said, it may go up and it may not. I said, they may make some money and may lose what they've paid in it. And so one of them said to the other and said, let's go. They got up and left. And I stayed, and the man says, what made him tell me that? I said, he thought he'd buy your lease each other. He said, well, what would you do? I said, I doesn't have a lease with me.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.